right here, there you have it. The president, the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama, giving the speech here during the DNC convention week as they prepare for Kamala Harris to be the official nominee of the Democratic Party. And we heard President Obama, as you can see him now, you heard President Obama and get up the crowd and hype up the crowd, and so that everyone here understands what the mission is. The mission is not just to understand and get this hype moment. The mission is to make sure that all of these people that you see in these seats right now, the delegates, the voters, the people, they're sitting amongst their politicians. He wants to make sure that you get out and vote for the next president of the United States, which he says is Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. His speech was inspiring, much like it was in 2008. His speech was full of hope, but his speech was very real about what Donald Trump means to this country right now and how Donald Trump would be a hindrance to this country. He said, we do not want to go back to those days. We will not go back. That was part of his mantra that he continued to repeat. We will not go back. We will not go back. Elect Vice President Kamala Harris as the 47th President of the United States. That's coming from the 44th, who also made history. We're here live on the floor on day 2 of the DNC convention. I'm Dara Kennedy.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
Wilmer Leon here at the Democratic National Convention 2024, coming to you from the United Center in Chicago, Illinois, in the house that Mike built. And we thought we'd just go inside, go down to the floor of the arena as they're preparing for the event to kick off, with Joe Biden going to be the primary speaker at the event, opening up the event. And let's get a little behind the scenes look, see how they're setting things up, listening to some of the music. The DJs are preparing for the introduction of the states, and all kinds of different roll call votes are going to take place, all kinds of things that they're doing here. Let's go inside and get a peek behind the scenes. Here on the floor at the 2024 convention, and just wanted again to give you a little insight behind the scenes as things are setting up. They're testing out the musicians, the timpanis are playing as we're here, and you can see you've got CNN, you've got NBC News, Fox News, PBS, all of the channels and all of the networks that you're used to seeing from the other side of the camera. We can see as they've got the stage set up. It's a really, really beautiful backdrop that they've created here for the convention.
I am here to be politically aware and to be civically engaged in what is going on with the Democratic Party and this nation's politics.
So as a volunteer, what are some of the things that they have you engaged in?
So I'm serving as a foreign press liaison, and so I'm working with the foreign press and making sure that they get to where they need to be and that they're educating Americans abroad about what's going on with the DNC.
Wilmer Leon, live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois at the United Center for politicsincolor.com. Politics in Color was able to catch up with Senator Bernie Sanders as he was entering the floor of the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago, Illinois. And here's what he had to say.
Senator Sanders, how does it feel to be here at the Democratic National Convention?
Well, it feels great. Nice to see that Michael Jordan statue.
He was obviously happy to see the statue of Michael Jordan and was expressing the increase in energy that is being now demonstrated and felt throughout the entire party. Politics in Color was also able to catch up with California Congresswoman Maxine Waters here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Well, I want to tell you, I'm a friend of Biden, and I stuck with him until he made his decision. I think he said to some of us a long time ago, you had my back, then I'll have yours. He's done everything that he said he would do. He's an honorable man, and he did a most historic and fantastic thing when he endorsed Kamala.
Congresswoman Maxine Waters was expressing the appreciation that she feels for the service provided by President Joe Biden, and that is felt throughout the entire Democratic Party. Stay tuned with politicsincolor.com. We're in Chicago, Illinois, home of the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Hello And welcome to Politics in Color. I'm Wilmer Leon, along with my co-host, Dara Kennedy. And throughout the convention, we'll be conversing with various Democratic movers and shakers, as well as hearing from people of color who have questions about the upcoming election and the Democratic plan for communities of color. We invite you to join the conversation here at Politics in Color. Dara, this is going to be, and has already been, an incredibly exciting time. We have Vice President Kamala Harris going to be nominated as the Democrats' nominee for the 2024 election. Your thoughts?
Well, it's history, right? It's history in the making. We are really witnessing history right here on Politics in Color. We're happy to have you, and we do invite you to join the conversation. Just go ahead and follow us on all of the socials. Our handle is Politics in Color across all of them. We'll also be live streaming, me and Dr. Wilmer, and the behind-the-scenes information we get in our conversation, so join us on YouTube as well for the streaming process. As far as it goes for the week, I'm excited. It's energy. A lot of the people that we talk to are feeling that same type of energy of hope and change and unity. And where have we heard those words? When was the last time we heard those words?
Right? Si se puede. Yes,
right,
we can.
Right. Well, it was right here in Chicago, right, in 2008
Right.
when that same energy was happening. So it's exciting. And as a woman of color, it's exciting. But just to feel free, to look forward to something, I think is what all of this energy is that we hope to capture this week.
Energy is a very good word to use because a couple weeks ago, things were kind of flat.
Hey, last time I saw you, Dr. Wilmer, things are a little bit different. I think you were asking people, now, why are you doing that?
And
You wanted different kinds of answers.
And that's a great point, because one of the questions that I'm looking forward to getting an answer to is, what's in it for us? What's in it for us? We know about the symbolism, we know about the history, but this is about policy. This is about policy output. What's in it for communities of color?
Right. And I think, obviously, we start looking at the issues, right? Some of the issues that we talked about in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention, but economics is on people's mind, right? The cost of groceries, right? People want to know what Vice President Harris's economic policy, what her agenda will look like. People of color want to know, are they going to get all of their rights stripped away from them, right? Which is what Donald Trump has been trying to do and has already done by killing affirmative action, things that help people of color, by taking away women's rights, things that help women, all people across America, but specifically colors, people of color, those communities are most impacted by some of these downfalls that the Trump administration has put in place.
You mentioned you mentioned protecting rights.
Yeah.
And we have seen the program 2025, Project 2025. We know about, what is it, the program 47, whatever the heck they're calling it, Agenda 47, thank you. And they're running from their own written 900-page document.
Yes. By the way, written by Trump's associates and former team members.
Associates, but somehow he does not seem to have any recollection of it. Doesn't really seem to have. Well, we know he didn't read it, but not having really paid, and all of a sudden it's, I know nothing about it. When we know it's an outgrowth of the Contract on America, we know that it's an outgrowth. It's in many regards it's old wine in new bottles.
That's exactly right. We all like wine, though, Wilma. You threw me with that one because I always like a good glass of wine. But I think what we'll hear this week from the Democrats is it's dangerous. Pay attention. Don't blow it off. Just because Trump may be distancing himself from this Project 2025, don't blow it off. Because essentially, like you said, it's 900 pages of how to get rid of people that look like you and I.
That's a very, very, very good point. It's 900 pages about how to get rid of people like you and I. And so the question becomes here in Chicago, what's the remedy? What's the alternative? What's in it for us?
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris.
There we go.
Well, that's the answer we've been getting, right? She is the hope. She is the new idea. And let's be honest, this was fast-tracked. The last time you and I sat here and talked, it was Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, two men in their 70s, well, one in their 80s, one in their 70s, going at it. And we didn't have the same enthusiasm about the Democratic ticket, I think, that people have now.
So in terms of that enthusiasm, how does that translate from the United Center, the house that Mike built. How does that translate into on the ground electoral politics?
Booths. Well, I think we're seeing a good demonstration of how it's translating already. Every single rally that she has done has been sold out. She now has to do things at stadiums. She's doing them in airport lots because so many people are just excited. And I spoke to a couple of young people traveling here to Chicago, and they said, we feel like we're being seen, that we're involved because it's a fresh face. Even though she's been our vice president now for almost 4 years, there's a freshness to her. So to your point, what's going to make people go out? Well, people get up and go out when they're excited, when they have something to look forward to. And if they can have their mark on history by just voting this time, that gives people a little bit of solace and confidence about this country.
Are you concerned about the honeymoon period? Are you concerned about post-convention? Are you concerned about once the campaign actually starts? Usually, traditionally, it's after the convention that the battle really begins. So are you concerned about a honeymoon period? I
think this is non-traditional. We've not
Absolutely.
had this before,
Absolutely.
right? So I think everything, and with our times, right, the times that we're in right now, the way the campaigns are run are non-traditional. And we can credit some of that to Donald Trump, the way that he has run his campaign, if you call it campaigning, with his attacks and his rallies, and all of that is non-traditional. So what Vice President Harris did when Joe Biden passed the torch to her and essentially crowned her the next candidate has been non-traditional. She's been on the ground nonstop. So her campaigning has already begun. What she's going to do this week is introduce herself to the delegates and the rest of the world.
So final question for you and your thoughts about her selection as her VP, Governor Walz. Let me not.
No. Opine.
Well,
Here, this is what the week's going to be about: opinions and discussions. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think it's a very good choice. He has an incredible amount of charisma, an incredible amount of personality. Being from the Midwest, there's a well, not everybody from the Midwest, because Mike Pence didn't have any of this, but he has a real original kind.
He's got the guy next door.
That's what I was struggling for. The guy
that's what
next
he is.
door.
He's the
very
guy.
Practical.
Sure.
Very practical conversation because he comes from a farm. His family has struggled through what too many people in this country are struggling and dealing with right now.
It's recognizable.
It very, very, very much
right. So. It's tangible. His stories about his family being a coach. I mean, whose dad didn't try to coach their team? I was happy mine didn't. I was like, you can stay home, Dad. Whose dad didn't try to coach? That's the kind of guy that I think will resonate, to your point, with Americans. Now, I was a fan and am a fan of Josh Shapiro, Governor Shapiro of the state of Pennsylvania. I think he is amazing. I am also of the mindset of trying to unite this country. And I felt like had she also made history, as she's making history by choosing a Jewish man, especially when we're in the midst of this war, and I say we because this is on America's back, the war that's happening in the Middle East, I think that would help to unite this country. But I think what her campaign did was think about the bigger picture. We can't just think about this war, which is very important, which we can try to solve. We have to think about the country right now and going forward. And so I think that's why she didn't go with Josh Shapiro. But, he's in the ranking. And one thing that we can say, the Democrats here have a great future because they've got some fresh voices, some fresh faces, and people that can lead the country.
So what we need you to do, we need you to join the conversation. We are here in Chicago at the DNC 2024. Join the conversation with politicsincolor.com. There's an awful lot in store, a lot of interviews, a lot of folks that we're going to be talking with.
Wait a minute. What are you looking forward to? You asked me the questions. What are you looking forward to this week, Dr. Wilmer? Because I asked the questions too.
You covered it. There's really not a whole lot that I can add to what you had to say.
Are you not looking forward? Are you wanting something to come out of this?
What I want to come out of this is a clear understanding of what is in it for us and how Vice President Harris is going to deliver it. That's what I want to know. When we see her on Thursday, that's what I want to hear, so that we can walk away from this having a very clear understanding of it's not about symbolism, it's not about an HBCU, it's not about being a part of the Divine Nine, it's about policy output and how she's going to deliver.
That's a very small part of the population, though. The Divine Nine and the HBCUs, they're important because getting those students to the ballot box are going to be very important.
Up to this point, that's what we've been given. And we have to expand the conversation. We have to expand the analysis. And that's what I'm looking for.
So am I hearing you say you want to learn more about her or her agenda and policies?
I want to know about her agenda, and I want to know about her policies, and I want to know about how she plans to govern.
Because, it's only been 2 weeks. So hopefully she's been writing on the play. Because what's important is that she breaks away from, not totally, but that she owns her own agenda and policies.
Well,
that's what I'm looking for.
Well, you're right. But see, the
and
thing
not just
about
the
it's
Joe
only
Biden
2
ones.
weeks. I got that. But you've been here 4 years. So.
But it's been Joe Biden's policy.
Well, but she ran for the office as well. So it's not as though she comes in as a neophyte. It's not as though she comes in as a rookie. And you're asking me for my vote.
Yeah.
So if you're asking me for my vote, you got to tell me what I'm going to get.
Right.
That's what I want to know.
Right. And that's and I think we're saying the same thing. She's had a chance now to not veer so far away from the Biden policies that got them into the White House, but that now she has to own her own. And that's what I'm looking for.
And that's what we're here to find out.
See?
We are here.
That worked out.
In Chicago at the DNC 2024. Join the conversation, politicsandcolor.com. There's a whole lot more in store. Stay with us.
Dr. Wilmer J. Leon is a veteran political scientist. He's a seasoned expert in black politics, American government, and public policy. Dr. Leon is a nationally broadcast radio talk show host, nationally syndicated columnist, and regular political commentator on national and international news programs. Wilmer joins Politics in Color as a featured anchor host.
We're back. We are back here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Levi Rickert is my guest. Native News Online.
Yes.
Member of the Potawatomi tribe.
Correct.
Did I say that properly?
You did.
I've been practicing.
Great.
So Levi, what do you see as being the three most significant issues to Native Americans?
Well, we've done a poll recently, and the three most significant are tribal sovereignty and water rights, and other issues would be our voting rights. We need more representation in Washington, and we really want to get more Native Americans elected, but we got to take away some of the barriers that we have.
Talk about the water rights, because that's a huge issue, particularly with the Colorado River.
Correct.
And on the west side of the country. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't realize how many states get their water from the river, particularly when you get down to Southern California and I think Arizona are two. Why is that such an issue now? And because a lot of people also don't realize that it's a lot of that water flows through tribal lands.
A lot of it does, and one of the biggest issues we have is the Navajo Nation, where about a third of the population have no access to water. Last year, the Supreme Court ruled against the Navajo Nation, basically said Congress needs to act. There is a bill before Congress right now that involves the Navajo Nation, I think 17 other tribes, and so we're very hopeful that even this year, with the election year, we know that it's hard to get legislation done. However, it's promising.
The issue with the boarding schools,
correct,
and that was a big splash in the media.
Yes.
But then once the story ran away.
That's right.
So, talk a little bit about that and where we are with that, because that's still a big issue.
Still a big issue. In Native News Online, I'm proud to report we've done over 250 stories. When the mainstream media leaves the shiny object, as we say in the media, we stuck with it. And Deb Haaland, the Secretary of the Interior, first secretary ever in the history of the United States in the secretarial role. She's a member of the Laguna Pueblo. She started an investigation on Indian boarding schools. The report, the volume 2, just came out in June, and we are really hopeful that there can be some healing and that some more money needs to be given, and hopefully a commission will be formed to really investigate it further.
Just quickly explain to the audience, those who may not be aware of the real significance of the story, what is the basis of the issue?
Well, for over 100 years, the United States government took Native American children out of their homes, taking them many times thousands of miles away from home. Hundreds and hundreds have died. The report just released last month indicated that there are close to 1,000 kids who died, went home. Some of them are still buried at Carlisle, thousands of miles from their home. But what the real issue is, they tried to strip us of our dignity and our culture, and the ramifications live on even now, Wilmer. It's to the point where they call it historical trauma. Mm-hmm. And that's when I say we need to be healed. Our communities need to come together and figure out what does a healing really look like for each particular either tribal communities. Tribal communities could be urban Indians. There's a lot of Native people live in urban settings. So it's a big, complex issue. Will not be settled anytime soon, but it's something that we're going to, at Native News, will keep covering.
If you had, you do right now have the opportunity in Camera 3 to speak not only to the Native nations, but also to speak to the entire nation. What are the 3 big issues that you are taking away from here as it relates to Native rights?
Well, I'm really looking forward to, if there is a Harris Walz administration, seeing them further tribal sovereignty, settle some of those water rights as we talked about, and really look at, there's a big housing need in Native Americans, and I understand that the Vice President has already said that's one of her big issues. So those 3 things right there would be a really good start. And
you were telling me before we came online, you were about to talk about Governor Walz.
Yes, Governor Walz, the Vice President nominee, if he becomes Vice President, Peggy Flanagan, the Lieutenant Governor, who is a tribal citizen of the White Earth Ojibwa tribe in Minnesota, will become the governor. She'll be the first female American Indian governor in the history of the United States. So we are excited. A vote for Harris, a vote for Walz is a vote for Peggy becoming governor.
Levi Rickard, it's a pleasure, my brother. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wilman.
Native News Online.
Native News Online.
Potawatomi tribe.
I'm Potawatomi.
There we go. All right. Hey, folks, we cover it all here. Politics in Color, politicsincolor.com. Join the conversation. There's more. Stay with us.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
And we are back here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois, here at Politics in Color. I'm joined by Ashanti Golar, president of Emerge.
Yes.
And you are building a woman-led America, one woman at a time.
Yes, we are. So excited to be here talking to you today.
Thank you for joining us. So, what type of training program do you provide?
So what we do is break down and demystify what it takes to run for elected office for women. We do this through our signature training programs, our boot camps, our step forwards. But most importantly, we let women know that they already have what it takes. We just give them those tools, the skills, the resources, but most importantly, a network of support so they don't have to do it alone.
What would you say are the 3 or 4 largest issues that women need to understand, that people need to understand, but women in particular as they are making the decisions to run for office?
I mean, the biggest thing is make sure you run for the office where you're able to have the biggest impact that you want to. When women run for office, there's always pretty much a singular why that drives them, but we know that when they're in there, they introduce bills, co-sponsor more bills, and bring home more money to their districts because they really care about everyone. Making sure that you're good, your public speaking, your fundraising, knowing how to run a campaign. Those are all things that we teach them, though. So women, they already have it in them. We just give them those building blocks to be great candidates and great elected officials.
You've had some fairly successful graduates of your program, from what I understand. Give us a name or two that Just give us one.
Oh, well, we have 1,200 serving in elected offices, so I know we don't have all day.
Okay.
But we're very excited about Congresswoman Lucy McBath. She's an Emerge alum. Congresswoman Amelia Sykes. We have London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco. We have Joanna McClinton, the first woman speaker of the Pennsylvania State House. We have alums serving at the state and local level all across the country. But those are women who woke up one day, said that they wanted to make a difference in their community, chose to run for office, and now they're having a big impact.
How are your courses provided? Are they virtual? Are they classroom? How do you do what you do?
So we now do a hybrid environment. Before COVID, we were very much in person, but now we do that virtual, that in person, because we also want to make sure that our program is accessible to all women so that they can do it on an evening, they can do it on a weekend without having to worry about childcare or traveling across the state. So that is how we do it. We recently just did a virtual Step Forward training because we had so much energy after the switch happened, and we now have Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket, and so many women were ready to run for office. We did that, and hundreds signed up.
So, Step Forward training. What does that mean? What does that involve?
A Step Forward, we like to say it's a 101. So, what should you really think about when you start running for office to prepare? We do that within an hour or 90 minutes, and we just go over the nuts and bolts of things that you should start talking about, but also getting yourself mentally, physically, emotionally prepared for running a campaign as well.
And where are you based out of?
We are all across the country, but I am based out of Washington, D.C.
You're based out of Washington, D.C. Outstanding, outstanding. So Monday night was the kickoff to the convention.
It was.
And were there two or three individuals, two or three elements that spoke to you, that stood out to you?
I mean, I absolutely love seeing State Senator Mallory McMurrow from Michigan. She is an Emerge alum. She is very dynamic. I absolutely loved Hadley from Kentucky. I got to know her story when she was in Governor Beshear's ads. Just such a strong woman telling her story. And of course, seeing Secretary Clinton was everything. And the way that she is just so excited, like all of us, about Vice President Harris. And there's this video where you can see her looking at her, and you can see it was the passing of the torch. Just like it wasn't me, but it's going to be you. And it's this beautiful, beautiful feeling.
Why do you think this 2024 election is so important particularly to women and women of color?
We have to know that, yes, we're excited about the vice president, we're excited about Governor Walz, but it's so much bigger than them. Project 2025, people think it's something that's on the horizon. No, it's here. It's a reality. We see it being implemented in so many states. We see the harm that it does. But with these policies in particular, we know that they always have the hardest impact on women, especially Black women.
And for people that are interested in learning more about Emerge, where do they go?
You can go to emergeamerica.org. That is our website. You can also find us on social media at Emerge America.
Well, Ashanti Gore, president of Emerge, building a woman-led America, one candidate at a time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
appreciate
me.
It. Folks, Politics in Color is where you are. Join the conversation. Go to politicsincolor.com. Well, if you're watching this, you're already there. That means you need to stay there. There's more. Stay tuned.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
And we're back here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago at the United Center. We're joined by Gina Repass, the chair of the Kansas Democratic Party. Gina, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So before we get into your assessment of night one, this is a standard question that I'm asking everybody. Why does this 2024 election matter to communities of color?
Well, for one thing, as a young black girl, I was told by my kindergarten teacher that black people couldn't be president.
Oh, you were told you couldn't be?
Could not be.
Because, the adage was always, you can be anything in the world, even president of the United States.
Unless
wink,
you're
wink.
black.
Okay.
Unless you're black. So growing up as a young black girl in South Texas, I was told we couldn't be president. So for us to not only nominate another black person, but a black woman means everything. It means the fulfillment of what we are here to do.
So the first night, incredibly powerful night. How did it impact you, and what resonated with you the most?
There were so many moments when Hillary Clinton came out, when Secretary Clinton came out, the amount of applause and how we just kept going and building. That's someone who always said to us, there is a glass ceiling for women. I always say for women of color, it's more like a cement ceiling. So she put those cracks in it, and we are going to bust through it with a black woman. So that stood out. And then, of course, when President Biden came out, I got a little choked up, got a little emotional. That's a
Why?
hero. Well, that's a hero. That's a real patriot. People have tried to co-opt the word patriot. Democrats are patriots. Black people are patriots. We've always loved this country. And I know this is cliche, but even when it didn't love us back, we've always stayed in the fight, knowing we could be better. So when Joe Biden stood up there, our president said, I'm going to step aside after all of his years of service. That's what heroism, that's what patriotism looks like. And it was emotional to see.
And anything else stood out to you, resonated with you?
Well, of course, when, Kamala Harris came out, I was all puffed up.
Were you surprised?
I was, actually. And as the chair of the state party, I get to sit by the phone, the phone that rings on the floor. And they said, just so you know, VP is coming out. You need to tell your delegation to be prepared. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is happening. So I was very surprised.
And so let's talk about the party in Kansas. How is the party? What does your delegation look like? And what are some of the issues that are important to the delegation in Kansas?
Thank you so much for asking. I'm very proud that the Kansas delegation looks like the diversity of the country. I know people think of Kansas as a very red state, a rural state, a very white state, but our delegation is very multicultural. We've got young people, we've got old people, we've got people of all colors. We were intentional about that. And what's important in Kansas right now is freedom. Kansas was the first state in the country after the Dobbs decision in 2022 to vote to enshrine abortion rights. And so we're the kind of Kansas conservative that says, mind your own business, as Tim Walz would say. So it's important to us to have freedoms.
Let's expand on that a bit because I believe the Republicans thought by sending it back to the states that was going to be their strong move, that was going to be the piece de resistance, so to speak. And what they found out is that the script is getting flipped on them because they pushed it down to the states, which means now the people actually get a chance, which then from there we can get into all politics is local.
That's right.
But talk about the significance of that vote in Kansas.
Well, there's a fun phrase that says mess around and find out.
There you go.
I do believe that that's what happened. Now, what they were trying to do, though, is so many of our state legislatures have been gerrymandered.
Right.
So that they are controlled by what I call a minority majority. So in Kansas, we have that. We have a majority of Republican, a super majority, which we are going to break this cycle. But they have a minority view. And the people of Kansas, even though they gerrymandered and they put, by the way, that vote on a primary day where they thought turnout would be low. We came out in record numbers, and we defeated that amendment to try to take away abortion rights 60 to 40%.
You're talking about all politics being local. That's how I framed it.
Certainly.
But down ballot being very important. So how significant is this election to the down ballot in terms of your interest in Kansas?
I'm so excited about this election. We were going to be fighting. We are 2 seats shy in our House to break a supermajority. We have a Democratic governor, and we're 3 seats shy in the Senate. But unfortunately, when she vetoes bad legislation, Republicans can override her. So it forces us to have to work with them, and there are no more moderates. So we have to break that supermajority. We were going to be in a fight. We still are. But now having this new ticket, the energy and enthusiasm, we had so many people sign up to volunteer. We had people walking into some of our county offices bringing us checks for Vice President Harris. And we're like, great, we'll take it. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but we'll take it.
Just don't co-sign it.
Yeah, right. Don't write it out to me, but we'll get it somewhere.
So the enthusiasm that you're feeling in a traditionally red state like Kansas, how bright do you see the future now?
If you can get Kansas excited, I think the future looks great. And Kansas is on fire. Republicans, independents, and of course all the Democrats. I've had so many Republicans come and say, I'm a Republican, but I'm voting for Kamala. Like, they are very excited.
So the stereotype of a Midwest state like Kansas would be the MAGA capital of the world. But that dynamic is shifting.
It is shifting. Well, I think people are tired. There is an exhaustion to being a part of the MAGA movement, but I will say this. My counterpart, the GOP chair, is a deep red MAGA Republican. He's a Donald Trump sycophant. So we do have that pocket. But there's so many more people who are just exhausted on it. It takes a lot of energy to be hateful. It takes a lot of energy to be mean and vitriolic. People want joy. People want to love their neighbor again. That's part of my message. It's okay to love your neighbor again.
Gina Repass, thank you so much. Chair of the Kansas Democratic Party. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us here at Politics in Color.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Folks, Politics in Color, join the conversation. This is where you want to be. politicsincolor.com. There's more. Stay tuned.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
Welcome back to DNC here. We are live at the United Center as we continue to break down the week with very important guests. We have one here. He's not quite a politician. He was almost there, but you may know him from January 6th, which is not a laughing matter, a part of the Capitol Police. That day, Harry Dunn joins us now. First off, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
For trying to help protect America and what our Constitution stands for.
Thank you. That day, I was just doing my job, right? But now, every day afterwards, it's because I'm an American citizen, love this country. We all got a job to do, so we put that out there.
Well, that was a job that has changed the face of America, though, right?
Not really. I think it exposed the face of America. Like, a lot of that hate, people like to blame Donald Trump for the hate that he caused. No, he just exposed it, and he let people feel more comfortable about being who they were. Joe Biden, in his speech last night, when he referenced the Charlottesville thing, he said they came out the woods, but this time they didn't have their hoods on. That was Joe Biden. He said that last night. So they've always existed. They're just comfortable doing it now. So I think it exposed the face of America, not necessarily changed it.
Right, and so as you're in that job, you're guarding these people every day, the congressmen, you're on Capitol Hill. How did you feel? And I know this is, we'll get to more stuff in a minute, but it comes around to what you're doing now. How did you feel in the moment? Did you feel supported after January 6th by the U.S. government?
That's a tough one. I never really thought about feeling support because I was on a mission, literally January 7th, to hold those people responsible accountable. And that started with Donald Trump. And that was, I feel like, I don't use this term, I feel like I was a one-man wrecking crew because I refused to shut up. As a Capitol Police officer, I had rules to follow. I broke them. I talked to the media. I didn't care. I got suspended from my job multiple times for breaking the rules about speaking out, but I didn't care. So it wasn't necessarily about feeling supported. However, the support was there. I've said this many times, if nobody was behind me or pushing me saying good job, I still would have continued to do what I was doing. However, I had hundreds and thousands of people across the country, across the world, supporting me. So that made it a little easier. So yes, I felt supported from people. The institutions is what's failed us. The Senate, when they refused to hold Donald Trump accountable, led by Mitch McConnell. The Supreme Court recently, in recent weeks, saying that he's immune. These institutions, yes, that government failed us, but not President Biden. You know, he's been fantastic in his support for accountability for January 6th.
Do you think you'll ever get retribution for that day? Do you think America will ever get retribution for that day?
I've learned not to trust institutions. Like I said, the Supreme Court, I thought that was going to be accountability. The Supreme Court shot that down. That's why when he said I ran for office, losing my race wasn't even the most disheartening thing. The Supreme Court's ruling was more disheartening to me. It was more of a gut punch than me losing my race. That Donald Trump wouldn't be held accountable. However, there's one more chance for Donald Trump to be held accountable, November 5th. And I believe that's when accountability will come. Say, we're done with him for the rest of our lives.
Officer Dunn, after he's gone through all of that happened on January 6th, decided that he was going to run for office. And so he ran for a seat in Maryland. And tell us the results. I see you dropping your head, but you were out there trying. Yeah, the reason that you even tried was why? Why did you decide that you wanted to leave the security life alone and then run for public office?
I couldn't let the fate of Donald Trump. I ran to stop Donald Trump. I couldn't let that fate rest in somebody else's hands. And, you know, I'm very confident with the person that ended up winning the election, but I'm not going to sit on the sidelines idly by and just wait and hope somebody else does it. We all can do something. And I'm not suggesting that everybody go out there and run for Congress. I mean, if you feel that's your calling, then absolutely go do it. But we all got a role to play in defending this democracy and stopping Donald Trump. So that was just one step now, and now I'm just happy to be out on the campaign trail with Kamala Harris. So you're still a public servant, just in a little different role. Just in a different capacity, yeah.
Well, you used the word hope, and you know, I keep saying hope was one of the themes back in 2008 when this country had the same type of feeling of energy, hope, unity, and change. Is that what you're feeling now as you're out here stumping for Vice President Harris as a surrogate?
Not to get all philosophical, but if we don't have hope, what else do we have? I mean, things aren't good. You know, it's so much hatred, it's so much division. If we don't have hope, what do we have? So yes, I can only feel hopeful. And it's not manufactured though. Kamala Harris is such a fantastic person. So yeah, I just wanted to vote against Donald Trump. But not only do we get to vote against Donald Trump, we get to vote for Kamala Harris. Like, that's exciting in itself. It means so much. A woman, a black woman, it just means so much. So I'm excited to do whatever I can do to get her elected.
It sounds like you're going to be a part of history more than once. So there's one ugly part of history that you were a part of, and then this could be an important part of history. So you know her as she's been on Capitol Hill. We've seen her. I've covered her. You know her. What doesn't America know? I think this is the time, this week, she needs to introduce herself to America. What don't they know about Vice President Harris?
What you see about her, that bubbly personality, that's genuinely her. It's not an act. It's not a front. As a Capitol Police officer, when she was a senator, she would always come to the barricades in the morning. She would always stop and talk to us. She wasn't dismissive. She was always laughing and smiling. She was just a genuinely good person who cared. She cared. So that's the person we get. We get somebody who cares. And to go from President Biden, one of the biggest caring people in the world, to Kamala Harris, I mean, America, we couldn't ask for two better back-to-back presidents. So.
And people of color and in the communities, you know, they're very happy. I mean, everyone is quite feeling that same energy from this historic standpoint. But the question is, can her agenda satisfy the minorities and diverse populations across America? We don't know what her agendas are.
That's the thing. The thing is, with that, when you say that, she's having the conversation. She's willing to talk and listen. What do we need? How can I serve you? And you see that even with the protesters. Let's sit down and talk. She's willing to have people come to the table. Whereas the other side, nope, my way or the highway. And
Donald Trump has said that black people all of a sudden are all for him. And black men, he's getting the majority of the black men vote. And black men, we gave the most money to black men under his presidency.
Fake news. Fake news. Fake news. Black people's support for Kamala Harris couldn't be higher. And we're going to win this thing. Yeah.
All right. So your goal this week, obviously, besides getting to know one thing, what's the mission this week?
Take it all in. I'm excited. As a Capitol Police officer, we were always involved in the conventions, but I was working. But now being here and just taking this all in, it's exciting. I'm excited. I'm a fan here right now. So many people are coming up to me asking to take pictures, and I want to take pictures with people just as much. It's like, this is awesome. I'm just taking it all in, and this moment is just great. We have some fantastic speakers on day one. I can't wait to see President Obama out there. It's going to be great, I'm excited.
Well, we're excited to have you.
Thank
and
you.
We're excited that you were there on January 6th. And we're excited to have you at the Democratic National Convention.
Thank you.
Officer, because you are still one for the service that you've done. Harry Dunn joined us here on Politics in Color. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Dara Kennedy is an award-winning anchor and producer. As a skilled broadcast journalist, Dara has covered major news events spanning 5 continents and over 50 countries. She's interviewed prominent figures in primetime and morning shows across all media platforms. Based in New York City, she delivers the latest national and global headlines as an anchor in the nation's premier market. She joins Politics in Color as a featured anchor reporter.
Welcome back to the DNC. We are here live in Chicago at the United Center as we continue this long but exciting week here at the convention as the party gets ready to officially nominate Vice President Kamala Harris as the presidential candidate. And I'm now joined by, I still call him Mayor Bill de Blasio because he was my mayor in New York City, but I guess you're a civilian now, so I'll just call you Bill. Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Call me Bill, and I just want to say, because you're from Brooklyn, I honor you. Because Brooklynites are the toughest, the smartest, the most streetwise, you name it.
That's right. Says a man from
I'm
Brooklyn.
I'm a Brooklynite.
So happy to have you here. You're in Chicago as a civilian, though.
Yep.
You're not in public service anymore. What are you currently working on?
Teaching, consulting, speaking around the world, commentary, a bunch of different things. But I'm here because I believe in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And we have a chance now to remake America. I mean, let's be real. This is almost like a divine intervention occurred in the last month. It's something so extraordinary for Joe Biden to make the decision he made, which I can personally tell you is not easy to decide to leave this life. And then for Kamala Harris to come in as gracefully, as quickly, as intensely, as humanly. I mean, her human quality has been extraordinary. Her vision. She's presented, honestly, a much more compelling vision than Biden had in the campaign previously. The whole world has been remade in the course of a month, but we all have work to do. We now have to make it real.
Well, you know what it's like as a politician to have to pivot because
Yeah.
I was one of your residents when you were working COVID and you pivoted every day. You needed to be able to capture the attention of all New Yorkers, but in our case, in all of America and the world.
Yeah.
How can Vice President Harris pivot to capture all of these other voting blocks that President Biden hadn't necessarily gained yet? And we're just 3 months away from the election.
Look, I think she started about as well as you possibly could have humanly. I mean, it's like she has presented an authentic vision and an authentic self. And I think we're seeing a side of Kamala Harris we didn't get to see before, and people like it. It certainly speaks to the women of America who will decide this election. I think her focus on reproductive freedom is powerful and necessary. I think a lot of the mainstream media underestimate, and the mainstream political class underestimate that the choice issue will be dominant, because the women of America will get to decide versus the guy who took away their right to choose or the woman who's going to bring it back. I know where they're going. They're going to choose Kamala Harris. So that's going to energize women. That's going to energize, certainly, on top of that, people of color are feeling something they did not feel before enough with Joe Biden, younger voters, progressive voters. But now she has the challenge of just constantly getting out there and spreading the gospel, as it were, showing that vision. She did it wonderfully with the economic speech last week. Got to do more. She's got to add to it.
Yeah, I think there actually needs a full agenda that is being laid out this week. But you said something I want to go back to in terms of people of color. Our audience is made up of people of color. We are a large voting bloc, and President Biden, love him, but you know this. There was a dip from when President Obama was. All of the excitement and the high numbers of people of color going to the polls. That dropped a little bit with President Biden.
Yep.
But then since then, we've even had people of color, specifically Black Americans, say that they want to go over to the Trump side. Number one, how's that possible? But number two, what's the plan, or what's an idea or suggestion to remedy that and bring black voters back to the Democratic side?
Look, we learned everything we need to learn to answer that question in the state of Georgia in the year 2020. The amazing work that was done to elect the two senators, obviously. And by the way, Reverend Warnock was unbelievable last night. I mean, he said things that I hope all of America takes to heart. But that work was done on the ground. That was not...
A Jewish man and a black man.
Yeah, amazing. In Georgia. Yeah. But the work was done on the ground. And it was largely done by African-American women who will never be famous. We know Stacey Abrams. We love her. We honor her. But there were thousands of grassroots women, leaders, activists in rural counties, in suburban counties, in Atlanta itself, etc., who did that work of building infrastructure. This is not just about knocking on doors. This is about being in houses of worship. This is about neighbor to neighbor. This is about talking to people at family gatherings. There's a lot of people will get off that Trump flirtation if their family, their neighbors, the people they worship with, go right up to them and say, we got to be there for Kamala, and make it personal. This is personal. And by the way, every woman should tell every man, this is personal. Your body, as a man, you get to decide what to do with. Women don't have that right now in America. This is personal. You got to be there for your women.
What do you say, or what is the thought process for the black men that I talk to that say, but I made more money, my pockets were fatter, there was more income coming in under Donald Trump?
I understand people are practical, but let's do a little history. There was a pandemic. It threw everything off. That was not Joe Biden's doing. Joe Biden helped get us out of it, thank God. This economy... Look, wages have been going up. People aren't feeling enough. We got more to do, but wages have been going up. Inflation is coming down. And in the end, if you're looking at Kamala Harris, who's going to be committed to the black community in the deepest way, versus taking a chance on an overt racist who's making claims that he's interested in your well-being when he has literally constantly said the opposite. If you saw that recent imagery, that horrible, horrible Republican imagery that said, this is your neighborhood under Donald Trump with the American flag and the picket fence, and it was white, 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 and here's what's going to look like if it's Kamala Harris and it was all people of color. I mean, you don't need to know anything else. He is appealing to the worst racial instincts of America. There's not a black voter out there who should accept that.
There are two issues right now that are heavy weighing going into November 5th. Project 2025 and the war in Israel.
Sure.
Now, the speeches were great.
Yep.
We heard, but we did not hear anything about Israel. We live in the city where we have had the most protest about this war.
Sure.
And we see, and there's happening everywhere. They're happening right outside our door right now. How do you suggest, as a surrogate to the Harris campaign, how do you suggest that they tackle the war in the Middle East?
I think...
Because you can't hide from it.
No, you can't, and you shouldn't.
And that's a voter bloc of people of color that need to get to the polls.
100%. Look, I actually would just respectfully challenge one thing. I think, not only did AOC speak about it last night, but President Biden himself said the protesters have a point. The President of the United States said that. So I think the difference here is when Kamala Harris obviously was going to get the nomination, she said things that we needed to hear more about the suffering of Palestinians. You can believe in the state of Israel, as I do. You can believe that the Jewish people need a homeland, as I do. But you can also say Benjamin Netanyahu has created a massive humanitarian crisis. He needs to go. America will not be party to it. We will defend Israel, but we will not be party to the suffering of people, civilians, and we demand change in the Israeli approach. She started down that road. I think she has to go farther down that road.
She has to figure out how to bring that together because Americans want to hear that. I don't know if we have time for Project 25. I know you're on the run, but in your off the top of your head.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it? What do people need to know? Why they should be aware and look out for what Project 25 really is?
I think the simplest way to say it is not only a pathway to a kind of dictatorship, honestly, but the rich will get richer. I mean, for all those folks worried about the kitchen table issues in their own pocketbook, you look at that document, it is tailor-made to put more and more power in the hands of fewer and fewer wealthy individuals, and very few of those individuals will be people of color. I mean, the Trump project has been racist from day one, but it's also been about giving money back to the rich, not to the poor. Let's be clear. Biggest tax cuts for the wealthy and the corporations in the history of the United States of America. And Project 2025 puts that on steroids. That's the way to think about it in real human terms.
How does this moment feel for you right now?
Otherworldly and beautiful, amazing. I was feeling down after the debate. I'm not going to lie, I was feeling very down. The turnaround has been one of the greatest, fastest, most amazing moments in American political history, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it.
We need you back in public service.
Well, thank you.
Mayor de Blasio.
I accept.
Thank you so much for stopping by on
Thank
Politics
you.
in Color. Everyone, Mayor Bill de
Thank you
Blasio
very
here
much.
joining us. Stay with us.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
And we're back here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois. I'm joined by Steve Benjamin, Senior Advisor to the President and Director of White House Engagement. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. So glad to be here.
So the first question that I'm asking just about all of the guests is, why is this election so important to communities of color?
Well, I'll tell you, the story, and I'll talk about African Americans, and quite frankly, the same argument applies to every other community. The story of the African seed and the American son is something that's amazingly important and unique in the history of the world. And when we came into this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, we're talking about the greatest pandemic since 1918 that disproportionately affected black lives and people of color. We're talking about the greatest economic disruption we saw because of COVID, maybe since 1929, and also the greatest social unrest since 1968 after the murder of George Floyd, all come into reality right there. But on day one, President Biden and Vice President Harris made a commitment that equity would be central and core to every single thing they would do. It became a part of the American Rescue Plan that made sure that not only did we get shots in the arms, we saved millions of lives, starting with each and every one of us, made sure working people and those who couldn't socially distance because of the nature of their jobs had PPE and the equipment they needed to keep themselves alive. After we saved lives, we started saving livelihoods. Okay. And as a result, we have 18 million new small businesses, more black businesses started in the last 3 years, in the last 30 years. We watched the racial wealth gap close to its narrowest margin literally in 4 decades. First quarter last year, African American unemployment, Latino unemployment, Asian unemployment hit record lows since we started disaggregating data over 50 years ago. We're talking about the disproportionate impact of student loan debt. And now over 5 million people have seen $170 billion of student debt forgiven, changing people's lives. I've had men and women come to me and tell me that they couldn't pay for their children to go to college because they were still paying for student loan debt that was hanging over their heads.
Well, when the Obamas tell you that they just finished paying,
I'm telling you, man, it's real. I mean, it's real. So the job creation numbers, 16 million new jobs, the focus on racial justice. Congress would not pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So the president put an executive order in place that put all the elements of the act into law for federal law enforcement agencies. That I know something that if the former president's reelected, he will repeal immediately. So for people who don't realize that everything we do, from our government-issued birth certificate to our government-issued death certificate, everything in between is influenced by the man or the woman who occupies the highest office in the land. This election is critical. It's a clear choice between freedom and democracy, and those who seek to have authoritarian rule. So, I mean, I want to encourage people to at very least first vote. Vote, use a franchise that people paid for with blood, sweat, and tears. People gave their lives. You vote your conscience, but if people pay very close attention to the candidates, we will see that we don't only have a chance to make history, we have a chance to make her story. We have a amazingly talented vice president who every single day of her professional life has worked for the people. Her only client have been the people of San Francisco, of California, and the United States of America. And I'm excited and inspired. I'm excited for young ladies like my two daughters who have been fighting to make sure in their own way. Neither one is old enough to vote now. The other one's still not old enough yet. But understand that they're growing up in a world in which they have less control, less rights over their body, bodily autonomy to make their own healthcare decisions than their mother did or their grandmother did. It's untenable. So it's important to every community, but it's particularly important to communities that have been disinvested in over decades.
Two daughters, one old enough to vote, one not. How important is it to engage the younger daughter to see to it that when she does turn of age, that she already understands the realities that are impacting her immediate life and her future?
Well, so I served, before this job, I served 12 years as mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. I served as president of the U.S. Council of Mayors and president of the African American Mayors Association. So our children, and my wife serves as a federal judge. So my children have been surrounded by their parents and grandparents who understand the importance of service and the value of the franchise. So even though my 17-year-old is not yet old enough to vote, she registers to vote. She gets out. She volunteers in every which way she can. She realizes again that but for her zip code or opportunities that her parents have had, that there are opportunities that she just wouldn't have. And so she makes sure that every other kid in every other zip code has the same opportunities that she has. I will tell you, I'm very encouraged and inspired by this young generation. They don't usually fall in along clear lines of blue and red, but they're deeply committed to a better world, a cleaner world where climate change is real and a true existential threat. They want peace, not war. They want everyone to have a chance. Yes, a meritocracy, but also someplace that has a true social safety net that works like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris do to drastically reduce the cost of medicine, so people don't have to make a decision of spending $1,000 a month on insulin versus $35 a month to keep themselves alive. So my daughters, thank God, they get it, and I'm encouraged that the younger generation gets it, but understanding the power of that vote, and that voteless people are hopeless people.
Monday night was the first night, the kickoff for the convention. What stood out to you? What resonated? Were there any particular points or highlights that stood out and resonated with you?
I thought all the speeches were great. I love Raphael Warnock, Senator Warnock. Jasmine Crockett gets young people fired up. I will tell you that my children adore the Congresswoman. But the president was the highlight of it. I mean, having the opportunity to serve the people of this country under President Biden in our Office of Public Engagement represents the front door of the White House. I say we represent the sacred trust that the president has with civil society, the men and women that he serves. And to see this man who has literally given his entire adult life to serve in this country and helped rescue this country 4 years ago, to show the ultimate sacrifice, and step aside when he knows in the deepest of his hearts and in his bones that he felt he could win again, but he thought it was the best thing for the country and the best thing for the party that would insist that his policies remain in place. It was in their best interest that he step aside. That is amazing show of character and humility and sacrifice, and watching him articulate that while at the very same time being Joe's a fighter. So he's landing some blows, but he also very clearly and articulately, a week or two after the Olympics, passed the baton onto this amazingly talented vice president that he's put in place, and we're excited about it.
So I'm going to ask you to look into this camera. I'm going to ask you what are the 2 salient points that you want this audience to understand about this upcoming election and why they need to participate?
Well, the reality is that this is your country, and I think it's so important to know that this country is a country built on the blood, sweat, and tears of men and women of all backgrounds, of every persuasion, who sacrificed and made sure that every generation would do better than the last generation. We are literally layers of brick in a foundation. We stand on the shoulders of great men and women who built this country. It's our job now to present our soldiers to preserve this great republic. So I want to encourage you to vote. I can't tell you who to vote for. I live on this side of the Hatch Act, so I'll be very careful about that. But I want to encourage you to vote and participate in this process and make sure that we protect our freedoms and that we continue to create opportunities for every single child of God in this country to have a chance to do the great things that God has in store for them.
Stephen, Benjamin,
yes, sir.
My brother.
All
thank
right.
you. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate you.
Folks, we're here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Politics in Color is where you are. Politics in Color is where you need to stay. Join the conversation. You know how to do it. There's more. Stay tuned.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
And as you can see, it's a very busy time here on Media Row. We're inside of the United Center, just getting ready to continue having conversations here. And while I'm getting bumped around here as we look for politicians and delegates to get ready for the roll call tonight, I'm going to toss it over to my friend and colleague, Dr. Wilmer Leon, who also has a special guest. Dr. Wilmer.
Thank you very much, Derek. Greatly appreciate it. Yes, we do have a special guest here. We have the former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. Thank you so much for joining us, Governor.
Great to be with you, man. Excited.
Well, why are you excited?
Well, let's see. This is my 13th convention.
Okay.
I've run a couple of these. I've chaired them, chaired the National Party. You know, usually when you have these events, it takes a day or two. The warring factions got to come together after the primaries. None of that this time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's together. There's joy, there's happiness, record amount of money's been raised, record amount of grassroots supporters have signed up to knock on doors.
Mm-hmm.
We've never experienced anything like this. It's extraordinary. So I'm pretty fired up. We've got a long way to go, but I'd much rather be us than them.
There was not as much energy 3 weeks ago.
That would be an understatement. Yes.
And that whole dynamic has shifted. In fact, an analogy I used was 3 weeks ago, the light at the end of the tunnel was an oncoming train. Now people see the light at the end of the tunnel is actually a light and actually an opening. How do you capitalize on this momentum to get us to the November 5th?
Yeah, hey, listen, I'm a friend of Joe Biden's for 40 years. I love Joe Biden, great president, got a lot of great things done. And I'd had him at my house on June 18th for a huge event.
Mm-hmm.
A week later, we had the debate. And we went through a couple weeks and, you know, all this stuff. But you know what? It's all behind us. And what's exciting for the president is he's now going to be responsible for setting the table to make sure we have the first woman and woman of color to be president of the United States of America. So we've got 4 great days of messaging going on here. You know, you look at the Trump convention, they got nothing out of it. They talked to their own base. J.D. Vance, got him nothing. I mean, he should have picked Nikki Haley. If you're trying to give him political advice, which I don't,
right?
Expand your base. Make it, but politics is about addition. Kamala Harris is about addition. Bringing more people in, inclusion, talking about their futures, building freedoms, women's reproductive rights, building a better economy for everybody. That's a message that resonates with folks all over the country. People have had it with Trump. They don't want his extreme agenda. He's a convicted criminal. We're done with it. But 2016 was close. 2020 was close. We cannot take anything for granted. They're going to do everything they possibly can to take this election for us.
Talk about the dynamics of the politics of Virginia. I'm a graduate. I'm an alum of Hampton Institute, now Hampton University. I got there in the 70s. Virginia was considered traditionally a red state. It has now moved purple thanks to thanks to administrations such as yours, Governor Wilder's. Talk about the dynamics that has been able to shift the politics of Virginia, because we're seeing that in Arizona. I've been telling folks for a while it could very well happen in Texas over time. Talk about those dynamics.
Yeah, I think if you look at a state like Virginia, a lot of people have moved into the state. Northern Virginia has changed the entire trajectory of our state. There are more Democrats. There are more blue-minded individuals. And you've had a long succession of Democratic...
Excuse me. When you say blue-minded individual, what does that mean?
They care about the things that we care about. They care about minimum wage. They care about a great education system. They believe that everybody should have access to quality and affordable health care. The things that, I call them blue issues, there are issues. Donald Trump doesn't want to increase the minimum wage. He doesn't want people. He didn't like the Affordable Care Act. So totally different than how we are on issues. Hey, listen, when you get Democratic governors, when I became governor, we had a racist old Jim Crow law that you couldn't vote if you'd committed a felony. Now, felony threshold was $100. So if you're a 16-year-old kid and you steal sneakers or something, you don't vote for the rest of your life. Horrible. It's a Jim Crow. I use executive authority to give 200,000 people back the right to vote and franchise people so that they can come back in and vote. And, I'm very proud that all these people can now vote today. We got to treat people with dignity and respect. That's what Joe Biden has done. That's what Kamala will done. So in a presidential year in Virginia, we're a blue state because of high turnout. And the folks, particularly in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, where you have a lot of federal workers, they don't like Donald Trump's talk about shutting the government down, government shutdown. Because, people don't understand this. They hear, government shutdown. Ultimately, they'll get paid, right? That's what you always say. They'll get paid. You tell that to someone who's got to pay their rent or buy their groceries. Yeah, they may get paid in 8 weeks. Meanwhile, they've lost their house. So that's what I talk about. So we're blue in a presidential. We're done. I think North Carolina is the next one to flip. Georgia's right there. And we can build a new blue wall in our country going forward. There's more people, Wilbur, who believe in the things that we believe in than they believe in.
Final question for you. You talked about voter enfranchisement. It seems as though the other side is more engaged and more concerned about disenfranchisement. And an example, the mail-in ballot. As I understand it, initially mail-in ballots were the creation of the Republican Party to help rural voters who was difficult for them to make it to the poll. Now they want to remove those types of access points to make it harder for people to vote.
You're 100% right. And it drives me wild. At the end of the day, you just want everybody to vote, right?
Right.
Democrat, Republican, I don't care.
One person, one vote?
One person, one vote. And listen, when I was chairman of the Democratic National Committee, I started the Voting Rights Center there because it drove me wild. Like in Florida, in Hispanic areas, there are members of the Republican Party that would wear windbreakers that say police on the back and to intimidate, voter intimidation at the polls, which is going on, as you know, for years and years. But the mail-in ballot, what's your argument? It's a secure ballot. You fill it out and you mail it back in. They know and we know that when more people vote, we win.
Got it.
And I remind you that of the last 8 presidential elections, the Democrats have won the popular vote in 7 of 8.
Right.
Hillary got more votes than Trump did.
Mm-hmm.
Gore won that election in 2000.
Correct.
Hillary won it in 16. And if Jim Comey had not come out and did what he did 12 days before the election, Hillary Clinton would be in office. Donald Trump would never seen the light of day.
Governor Terry McAuliffe, thank you so much.
Sir.
Greatly
Honored to be with
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, folks. PoliticsInColor.com is where you are, and you know that. PoliticsInColor.com. Join the conversation. Thank you all so much. Greatly appreciate it, Governor. Thank you. And there's more on the other side. Stay tuned.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
Welcome back to the DNC here at the United Center, where we continue to have great guests come along as we get ready for this long week. We're kind of halfway through the week. We are now joined by Mr. Bill Daley, and you may know him as part of the Obama team, but you also worked with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Yep. And I just made a joke to him that he's now back in the mix because you kind of got out of the spotlight for a while. What's this been like so far? We're only a couple of days in.
You know, yesterday was a spectacular start to the convention. You couldn't have a better day. Delegates really loved being in the city. The weather was great. Last night's program with the speakers, with the president, having the vice president there was truly an inspiring, exciting evening. So it's a great launch for a convention. That dynamism is going to continue tonight with my former boss, President Obama, and Mrs. Obama speaking to the delegates and a whole bunch of other speakers and entertainers. But it's really about the vice president and the vice presidential nominee that's coming up tomorrow night and Thursday that people are excited about.
So you've worked with two presidential candidates, in Hillary Clinton and President Obama.
Well, I've had a few more. I chaired Al Gore's campaign.
Oh, wow.
I was with Walter Mondale 100 years ago.
Oh.
So I've spent a lot of time around presidential campaigns. I don't think I've seen a burst of energy like this one. In 2000 with Al Gore, we kind of had to grind through it. Bill Clinton went through a lot of primary problems, but in the general election it was fairly easy. But no one's seen this sort of burst on the scene of politics and the way the vice president has captured the excitement and caused the excitement in our electorate right now.
What do you think that is? Because I was quite excited in 2008 for obvious reasons, but you just felt good. You felt energy. Mm-hmm. And the campaign slogan was hope and change and unity. So how couldn't you get on board? We don't really have a campaign slogan for Vice President Harris yet. We don't really have. We have energy, and we've got large sellout arenas. We haven't honed in on what the it is. What is the it?
I think it will come. I will say, in my opinion, right now, it's all about the future.
Yeah.
You've got a generational change, obviously, with the vice president, but it's also sort of a spirit change, just the way she carries herself in a positive, happy sort of way that makes you feel good. You know, the world's got lots of issues, we've got a lot of problems, a lot of people are down. But she makes you feel that, okay, we'll get through this, no matter how difficult the problem would be. We don't have to be so down on ourselves or so down on our country like President Trump often does. We've got to be upbeat and positive. There are enormously great things about our country. Yes, we have challenges, and we're trying to address them. But I sense from the vice president a spirit of positive attitude. Let's get at it and try to solve the problems as opposed to just complaining and whining and being so negative all the time. And that slogan will come out of this week, in my opinion.
Right, and because now I'm thinking back to Hillary Clinton's campaign, and her whole thing was break the glass ceiling, which she also spoke of in her speech, saying that now it's also actually, Hillary said that she put the cracks in the ceiling.
She put a lot of cracks in the ceiling.
She put a lot of cracks.
And I don't think the vice president will stress that as much.
Okay.
She has a record. She's been involved in administration. She's had her own career before that in the Senate and Attorney General. And will represent, obviously, women. And my wife, my daughters, my granddaughters are extremely excited about this election because we will ultimately break the ultimate glass ceiling. But I think the vice president, so far, her tone seems to be, that's not what this is about alone. This is about solving the problems in our country, addressing the problems in the country, trying to bring some more unity to this country, build on what President Biden has done. But then she's going to begin to lay out who President Kamala Harris will be.
Right, and I think that's what the goal is this week, for her to actually just introduce herself to not only the country but the world, because she's been in this secondary role. High level, obviously, vice president. But let's get to what you're good at, which is policy. And we have not heard lots, and obviously it's been, 16 days?
Yeah, right.
It's been 16 days.
Come on, give her a break.
Give her a break. It's 16 days, but we're less than 80 from the election, right? And so we've had to pivot. We as Americans in this country has had to pivot. What, her economic plan, a lot of people and a lot of men of color and people of color say that they made so much money under Donald Trump, and there's caveats. There was COVID to that, right? And so people are really eager to hear what Vice President Harris's economic agenda is, especially people of color.
I think, yes, the economic agenda, but the other agenda, foreign policy.
Foreign policy.
And she will begin to lay that out. Does she need to have a 10-point plan for everything? No. Mm-hmm. I think it's more important right now for people, and I think her speech on Thursday night, to get a sense of who she is as a person and what sort of things, what will motivate her as president. We all know we have a divided Congress, and I don't think anybody thinks that the House and Senate and the White House will be held by one party, either party.
That's right.
So you're going to have divided government. So I know this will shock you, Dara. Politicians will propose a lot of things, but many of them can't get through Congress.
Yeah.
Both the Republicans will, and so will we. So when that's the case, who she is and how she addresses issues, I think will be as important as the 5-point plan that she may propose that could never get through Congress anyways.
Right.
So I think that's what really people want to know. Who is she? What's she about? We know who President Trump is and what he's about. We knew President Biden because he was around for 50 years.
Yes.
So you had a sense of how empathetic he was, how he dealt with issues, what motivated
Well, we also saw his record, right? There's
and
a chance to look at his actual record over those years.
Record.
Right, his voting record.
Which changed.
Yeah.
And what was important to him 40 years ago changed, maybe, and what his focus was. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the vice president was attorney general. She was a prosecutor, and a senator. Those are different jobs.
Those are,
but they do
and
build
state level
one's
versus
career.
senator. Yeah.
Anyway, it's good.
Yeah, and so I think also there's a voting bloc out there that is ready to be had. And that is the voting bloc of the Palestinians and the Israelis as they deal with this war in the Middle East. She's not really yet addressed it. Again, I know we haven't had a chance to hear from her much, but I think people this week are kind of waiting on Thursday. Is she going to address the war in the Middle East?
Well,
I mean, I know it's a fine line.
First of all, it's difficult when you're in an administration. The president does foreign policy. So up until she actually is the winner, whatever her beliefs may be, they have to be subservient to the president because there's only one commander-in-chief at any given time. So she's very honest with you, she's in an awkward position.
Quite precarious, I would say.
I was there when Al Gore was in a similar situation. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of express how you feel and how you would, if people understand how she addresses issues, she may not have to address a specific issue if they have a sense of how she goes about the process.
But, Bill, I want to push back a little because right outside our door, these protesters, they want answers. They're banging. Now, clearly, we don't go out and give answers, but they're protesting right outside of the DNC.
And that's great. And they will vote one way or the other if they want. If they're a single issue thing and they don't like the president's policies or therefore the vice president's, and they want to be with Donald Trump because they think he'll have a better policy in the Middle East, as the vice president said, good luck with that one.
Can I ask you, well, you were with Gore and Bush. I mean, and this country was built on the back of immigrants. Was immigration such a problem back when you were working for those presidents?
It wasn't the issue. First of all, you didn't have the porous border, quite frankly, we have now. And much of that is because of the continuing economic difficulties around the world. And it is a difficult issue. There's no doubt about it. It's a difficult issue in all communities, okay? And how to deal with the cost of this. And just the changes that come when you have such a large number. We all celebrate diversity, but there are challenges to such a diverse society. There are. And there's a reason nobody else has tried to do what America has done. Be so diverse. No other country in the world has tried this. But there are challenges from it, and we're dealing with them. And the vice president and the president are trying to deal with it. You can complain about a problem forever. There was a solution, or at least a good bipartisan solution, that was driven by Republicans, that was rejected by President Trump. And then
Vice President Harris, as they call her, the border czar, and we know that's not the case. But there's that title and that theme that continues to roll around.
And it is a real issue, but it was not as anywhere near the issue it is today in 2000. That's for sure.
You just mentioned diversity. When you worked with Hillary Clinton, she was able to pull women of color, black women, women of color were all women, but especially women of color. When you worked with President Obama, everybody black came out. I mean, you know, we all were so excited, and I say this jest, but all colors, everyone came out. Kamala has some work to do because, again, I think people don't know her as well. I mean, there's a certain base of Democrats that will support her at all levels. But what do you think she needs to do more to grab more of the younger people of color, or more of the, maybe more of the, like my uncles that sit back, you know, at home and just say, oh, I don't know if I'm ready, or I don't know much about her. There's a voting block there in African Americans that I think she needs to hone in.
I think she has to focus on it. Now, the good and bad news of a short campaign is the good news is, you know, you don't have a lot of time for the opposition to really beat you up. The bad news is you've got a lot of work to do. And as a Democrat, anyone running for president, and obviously she's in a much stronger shape right now than President Biden was. But President Obama, when he won the primaries against Hillary Clinton, it was June when he became the nominee, late June. So he didn't have that long of a period either to really introduce himself to the American people. But he did, because he ran a good campaign, and obviously he was a special guy, and remains that way. It's a Herculean task for her, but if the last 4 weeks is any indication, she sure got the talent to do it.
Bill, you're back in Chicago, where history was made in 2008. How do you feel in this moment right now?
You know, I feel really good about where the Democratic Party is, but also I think the impact that her candidacy hopefully will have on the American sort of psyche and get us more positive and the opportunities. Now, not everyone's going to agree with her, but it really is remarkable that in this country, in a brief 16 years, we could have two African Americans, one who's a woman, leading the Democratic, one of the major parties in our country, one having been elected president, and one within 70 some days of being a African American Indian woman.
Right.
And we are the last great country that has not had a woman president. And so a lot of ceilings may be cracked, and we should celebrate that, even if you don't agree with everything about her. And that to me, it is so symbolic of America. Yes, we have our issues. Yes, we have problems. Everyone wants to complain about them. We don't solve them, and we're making progress. But President Obama used to talk about, you know, this is like a river flowing down a stream, and you keep moving forward.
Yeah.
You don't get all the way down there. You don't solve all the problems, but you just keep trying to address them and keep moving along with the current in many ways. So
America's not in ruins?
No, give me a break. Why is everyone wanting to come here? Why did the whole world seemingly want to come? Why is it that our economy is the strongest economy in the world? We have innovators. We have people creating businesses every day. We have major employers in the country who are taking care of their employees, doing quite well globally. let's celebrate ourselves a little more than this downing sort of the end of the world is coming, and we're all going to, I don't know, do what to each other? I don't know, it's crazy.
I know that I have to let you go. I just have one question. What are your thoughts on President Joe Biden and the way that this has transformed for him to end his nearly 50-year, half a century career as a public servant?
Well, on the one hand, it's kind of sad to see the way it ended up. On the other hand, we're all celebrating, at least last night. You could feel the energy in this room saying thank you to him.
Giving the flowers.
Yes. It must have been a good feeling for him. Sort of
Oh,
bittersweet.
he teared up, didn't he, a little? Yeah.
Bittersweet. But obviously, if the vice president wins, then that's a hell of a statement for him.
Mr. Bill Daley, such an honor to have you sit here. You've worked with so many presidents. You've been a part of history, and I'm just happy to have this conversation. Thank you for joining us on Politics in Color. Thanks. We are Politics in Color, and we plan to be with you for the next 100 and more days of this U.S. presidential election.
There are several administrations where Republicans, in fact, had power. What did they do for black people while they had the power, while they had the gavels, while they had the Oval Office?
President, best economy ever for black people.
Well, that's not true. I mean,
What candidate that if they put up would concern you the most?
Well, I think Kamala, for the simple reason that it's the least amount of revision that has to be done.
Kamala Harris is a legitimate left-wing political person. I mean, you look at every crazy idea that comes from the left, she hasn't just said, I'm for them. She's voted for them.
Look, unless you happen to be a big tech billionaire or a Mexican drug lord, and by the way, if you're either of those, you probably ought to vote Democrat because your life has gotten much better.
We're all in the same boat, right? 401ks and IRAs are very revolutionary.
We may be all in the same boat, but we're residing in different cabins.
Now what's coming up next on the docket is for Donald Trump Jr. to come. As you can see, his dad behind us in the box with the entire family, and he's got other politicians there that are also on the docket, but just here to support him.
I ran for president with my vision, and it overlaps heavily with President Trump's vision, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help him succeed.
Character still counts, and I worried about the character of Donald Trump and leading our nation. I'm a Republican. I want to vote for a Republican, but I've indicated that I don't want to support somebody who's been a convicted felon.
You got to vote. And so at the end of the day, that's what you got to do. Where you land is where you land.
Yes, we're at the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. We'll be in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. We're traveling along with this process as it happens.
One of the things that I really am looking forward to doing with this platform through Politics in Color is explaining to our audience, to our constituents, the why.
2045, it's projected that folks of color will be the majority, not the collective minority. So the politicians know this. And so if we're smart, we're going to make that investment in our politics, in going out there and voting and getting involved, because that's what makes a difference.
Brian Jenkins is an award-winning host and producer with over 35 years of broadcast journalism experience. He's anchored nightly newscasts, produced and hosted numerous documentaries and television programs in major markets across the country. Renowned for his compelling storytelling and communication prowess, he's played a pivotal role in many successful media campaigns. Based in Southern California, Brian joins Politics in Color as a featured anchor reporter.
Leon here with you live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois at the United Center. I'm joined here by Malcolm Kenyatta, Pennsylvania State Representative, and you have higher ambitions. You're running for Auditor General.
Listen, we got a lot of work to do to make government work for working people.
my first question, there's a lot of enthusiasm here that the gears have shifted dramatically over the last 3 weeks. What is in it for communities of color?
Everything. I will say it this way. America is great, but everybody hasn't benefited from its greatness. And a part of what we know is that there are far too many families who are experiencing life the way that I did. I grew up in a working poor family in North Philly. My dad was a social worker. My mom was a home health aide. I spent a lot of my life moving around 5-6 different places by the time I graduated high school. Got my first job at 12 years old washing dishes at a little restaurant. And a part of what I learned very early on is that for far too many families, it doesn't matter how hard you work. You get up every single day working your heart out, and yet you can't look your kid in the eye with a straight face and say, it's going to be better for you than it is for us right now or than it was for me. And so the question is, when we understand those as the stakes, because I think that's the stakes, then the question is, out of the two options that are on the table, who is, first of all, even interested in the problems that we've outlined? Donald Trump has no interest in even addressing any of those concerns. He's somebody who says systematic racism doesn't exist. He's somebody who hosts for lunch members, people who call themselves, proudly part of the alt-right, who call themselves proudly white supremacists, Christian nationalists. On the other side, you have Kamala Harris, who has a record of trying to make life better for folks. Now, I do want to say this. Just because you're in the arena trying to make life better for folks doesn't mean every problem has been solved. You don't run for office because you think everything's great. You run for office because you feel like there's something to do. And what I want to know is that the people who are running have in their heart a compassion for working people and have in their mind the capacity to execute the things that they say they want to do. I think she has both in spades, and it's why I'm excited, because I know when she talks about lowering costs, she means it and she's done it. I know when she talks about taking on price gouging, she means it and she knows what she's talking about. I know that when she talks about continuing to reform our criminal justice system, she means it, she knows what she's talking about. And what we have to do is recognize that when we win this election, because black folks show up in historic numbers, when we win, it's not going to be good enough to say, well, Kamala, we voted for you in November. We hope you solved all the problems. Because what's going to happen is her trying to do that $25,000
yes. Tax credit for first-time home buyers.
Her doing that, there's going to be a lot of special interests who don't want to see that happen. And so if we walk away after November and say, we hope you figure it out, elected leaders, and don't recognize that the elected leaders only elected leaders because of us, then we're missing the plot of the story.
So that right there takes me to the next question, which is accountability. And what are we demanding from her? Because you know better than I do, politics is about policy output. Policy is not about campaign promises. So how do we as a community, first of all, make the demands that need to be made and then ensure that the things that we voted for, we receive?
So let me say this. I never asked anybody, I never asked anybody to get caught up in the cult of my personality or anybody else's, okay? Mm-hmm. People who love me very much, they don't want to join my cult. I'm not asking you to. What I'm asking folks to do is to remember their power. It's not just about making demands. It's about recognizing how does policy actually get moved. Mm-hmm. Policy gets stalled or moved not because the politician who ran doesn't believe the promise they made. Let me give you an example. We have been trying to, in Pennsylvania, to raise our minimum wage from the $7.25 starvation level wage to a living wage. We've been trying to do that for a long time. I ran talking about that. I have not given up on that promise, or I didn't do it because Malcolm just didn't want to do it. To get a bill passed in the Pennsylvania legislature, first of all, I have to get a smart lawyer to write the legislation to make sure it was drafted correctly. Then I have to get the speaker to send it to the appropriate committee. Then that committee has to get 12 votes to send it out of the committee. Then it has to go to the floor, and I have to convince 101 of my colleagues to support it. Then it has to go to the Senate and do the same thing and get 26 votes. Then the governor has to sign it. Then I have to make sure that it was written correctly in the first part so that the court can't overturn it. Now, that's complicated. And so when I talk about us meeting the speed of the need, I get how people say, well, Malcolm, that sounds too complicated, and I have kids that need to eat tonight, so that's too complicated, that's too hard. But a part of understanding your power is understanding the process and understanding where you can put the pressure. We have to put the pressure on a bunch of elected officials who a lot of people don't know their names or haven't taken the time to understand them, because the president's elected by everybody, and so I get why everybody knows him. But there are a lot of faceless, nameless folks who are the reason that the minimum wage isn't raised. And there's no pressure being put on them because we don't know who the heck they are. And so a part of owning your power is recognizing that your work doesn't end on election day. Kamala Harris is only going to win because of us. That's true.
Right.
But she's only going to be a successful president if we don't buy into this flawed idea that our work is done on November.
Oh, I say all the time that many of us think that once we vote, our work is done. But after you cast your ballot, your work has just begun. Because you following your example in Pennsylvania and the minimum wage legislation, somebody has to be calling your office every day. Malcolm, what about that legislation? When you step out in the grocery store, you get out your car in the parking lot, somebody's got to go, hey man, what happened with that legislation? What are you doing? Where's the fight? And you can't just say, I'm working on it, right? People have to continue to pressure you to ensure that you fight for the things that you promised for, and that you do everything in your power to deliver. You're not going to win every one of those, but what constituents want to see is the fight.
You know, and we have to, and this is why it's so critical. You know, in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, we have two middle-class kids who, because of what America is, with all of its flaws, has made this week possible. That's not possible in every country.
Right.
But that has been possible here. So let me say this. A part of what you're trying to figure out as a voter, all of us, because I'm a voter, is do the people running, do they care about me? And I think we know in our gut, if we're being honest, that Donald Trump doesn't care about us, right? You might see him as a means to an end. He might, on occasion, through his rambling, say something that you also think is wrong. But I don't think anybody in their heart really believes that he cares about that.
No, he's a transactional individual. He cares about
you saying nice stuff about him.
Huh?
He cares about you saying nice things about him.
Well, he cares about the transaction. And once the transaction is complete, the individual involved in the transaction is irrelevant.
That's right. And I bring that up not because this election is about Donald Trump, but I bring that up to say that I believe in my gut, and I think a lot of people do, that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz actually care about families like that. I do think they care. And so to your point around you're not going to win every battle, you also don't know the issues that are going to come up.
True.
Right? As an elected official, you can never promise people that it's not going to rain tomorrow. You can make no big promises like that. You never know what's going to happen. And so a part of what you have to know is what is in people's hearts as best as you can ascertain, and how do they think about complex problems. And I think that for these two folks, they think about complex problems from a vantage point of what's the impact on the middle class. But you know, you hit the nail on the head, and I know that, you know, Black Com Media and you are going to be talking to our community day in and day out when she is successful. And I'm saying this today. She's going to win. It's going to be hard. It's going to be close, but she is going to win. When she is successful, we need folks to keep the energy that they have and keep the pressure on members of Congress, because there's nothing she's going to be able to do just because she won. A lot of the big things she wants to do, we saw it with student loans. The president tried to do something administratively. The Supreme Court came in and overturned it. And so it's going to require us to keep focus on the things that matter to our families, and then keep talking to everybody about, and even the people who we did not vote for. If you have a Republican elected official who's in charge of the committee where the bill is, you need to call him too, even if that's not your elected official. And so if we do that, I'm sure we're going to be successful.
You mentioned early in this conversation that your father was a social worker.
Social worker.
My mother got her MSW from University of Chicago.
God bless him. God bless him.
So I know that a lot of the conversations that you heard around your dinner table are the same conversations that I heard around my dinner table. And you seem, from the very little bit I understand about your background, you were living the very existence for the people that your father and your mother were supporting. So how did that shape your worldview?
You know, my mom would say something, and my mom, rest her soul, she'll be 65 today.
Okay.
And
happy birthday.
Thank you.
To your belated mother.
You know, it's tough because my mom always wanted to see a woman be president. She said, women know how to do stuff.
True that.
They do. They know how to get stuff done. But I think back because you said, you hit it right on the head. My mom would have us at the church volunteering at soup kitchens, and I would say to her, like, literally, we could get in the line. Why are we serving the food?
My mother had me handing out lunch at Head Start because she ran Head Start.
Right?
Right.
And you're like, wait, I need a Head Start, right? We're here
I'm
working.
hungry.
My mom used to always say, everybody can do something.
Right.
Everybody can do something. And I keep going back to this because when I hear the concept of, like, you know, what we demand, I get your point, but I only push back to make this broader point, that when you are in the position of making the decision, you're not making a demand, you're making a decision.
Right.
We are in the driver's seat when we use our power. There is not a political analyst around here who won't tell you that if black folks show up in big numbers, if young people show up in big numbers, we could decide every single election. It is just empirically a fact. It's not Malcolm's opinion. If young people who, like me, know the challenge of being able to afford that first home, if 90% of us showed up and said we want to be able to have our access to the American promise, if 90% of us showed up, do you know what would happen? We would have that problem solved. Because politics, so often, we move policy based on whether or not a political window is open. That's what I call it. You open that political window. I will never forget this. George Floyd's tragic death.
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania legislature, after his death, passed, I think, 6 different pieces of pretty substantive criminal justice reform, police reform legislation.
Right.
I always remind people, because I have people say to me, oh, well, you passed these bills because George Floyd died. Wrong. These bills have been introduced, some of them, for 7 sessions, or sessions 2 years. So for some of these bills, 14 years ago, it was first introduced. The reason we were able to pass these bills so quickly is because they had been written and introduced already. They were there just waiting.
Right.
What happened was this. After George Floyd's death, Pennsylvania, 67 counties, and you know one of your producers from Pittsburgh,
right?
Okay, it is difficult to get 67 counties in Pennsylvania to agree on anything. It's really difficult. But what happened after George Floyd's death is, in 63 of the 67 counties, people were out protesting every single day.
That's the demand.
But it was us making the decision to protest every single day, right?
I understand.
And what happened was, my Republican colleagues who said they would never bring up these bills, the Republican chair of the Judiciary Committee who said these bills would die in his committee every session, voted for this legislation because people showed up in his district as well. And so that's what we have to do. We can't just show up in Detroit, show up in Milwaukee, show up in Philly, show up in Pittsburgh. We have to also show up in rural communities and engage with rural white folks who are suffering in some cases just as bad as we're suffering.
If not worse.
If not worse. But we've had Donald Trump and other carnival barkers convince us that because we look different, that we should be at odds with each other. No, we should be at odds with the corporate monopolies and the billionaires who want to pick both of our pockets and tell us the other guy did it.
I know you have been working on issues related to poverty your entire career and your entire life, because your life has been your career.
Please tell my goddaughter that I'm a young man. Please tell her this.
He's still a young man.
Thank you.
I can break out.
Sayla, if you are watching, I'm
some
young.
Tower of Power.
Okay.
He's still a young man. Anyway, so what gets lost in a lot of the dialogue is when we talk about crime, folks don't understand that crime to a great degree is a result of poverty.
You're preaching.
It's not an inherent element within any community folks have needs. If folks can't meet those needs, folks will do what they need to do to meet those needs. Can you speak to, as an elected official, the reality behind understanding the dynamics of crime? And it's not a matter of more police, it's a matter of more services, so the police don't need to be called.
Let me say this. You know, as a black man in this country, a lot of folks who are dying of gun violence, a lot of folks who are victims of crime, first of all, look like me. I refuse to accept a false choice between no police and police that can shoot me with impunity. I refuse that.
Right.
What I want is that if there is a crisis, that somebody who's trained, who cares, shows up. And what I want to do, and what we've been trying to do as legislators, is to make sure that they're not just showing up with a gun. That in some instances, like what they're doing in Bucks County, they're showing up with co-responders to respond with a social worker like your mom or my dad, or trained mental health care professional to respond to a mental health crisis if that's a challenge, to get people services if that's what they needed, to show up with with somebody with Narcan if somebody's having an overdose situation. We cannot incarcerate our way out of the issues of crime in our community. We have to do what you said and invest substantively, consistently in the types of service that meet people's needs. And
But to do that, we have to change the mindset.
Oh, for sure.
We have to change the mindset. We have to change the the perspective or perception, us versus them. If it says on your door of your police cruiser to protect and serve, we need you to protect and serve.
You know, listen. What I know people want and what people deserve, because I think you always start with the stakes. When you start with the stakes, then we can have a debate on how we get there. You and I agree on the stakes because we're black men in America who understand this. I want to live
and
in
we're
a
children
safe
of social
neighborhood.
workers.
Right, children of social workers. I want to live in a neighborhood where I'm never afraid that I'm going to be shot dead just walking down the street. And, you know, I will take a backseat to nobody. I live in a neighborhood where, like, I hear gunshots ring out all the time. So I'm going to take a backseat to nobody on, like, wanting a safe community. Black folks want a safe community more than other folks. But what I also want is for the kids in my community not just to not be shot. That's the floor.
Right.
I want them to then go to a school where they don't have lead, asbestos, and mold in the buildings.
And they can drink the water out the water fountain.
They can drink the water out the water fountain. Where their teachers have all the things that they need. Where there's a social worker in that school providing mental health care. Where they get to leave that school and join a trade or start a business after. Or go to a 2 or 4 year college if that's what they desire to do. That is what I think the stakes are. And when we start with this idea that every single child of God deserves a life of dignity and respect, when we start with that idea, then we put in place the pieces to make that a reality. There are a lot of people who don't believe what you and I believe, that every single kid deserves quality education. They just don't believe that.
Right.
And so I believe that
because many of them believe that we aren't capable of learning. Why waste these tax dollars on educating these people, and these people can't learn in the first place?
You know, unfortunately for us, and I know we need to wrap, but unfortunately for us, I don't even need to intuit what these folks think. You just listen to Donald Trump. He tells you exactly what they think about us. And so we have to show him what we think about us. And so this election, I love Kamala Harris.
Okay.
I've gotten to know her. I've gotten to see her close. I got to see her far. But this election is about us and about what we deserve. And if you think you deserve a safe community where you have access to a high-quality education, where you can afford to live there, where you can retire with a level of dignity, where you get to look at the next generation and know that it's going to be better for you than it was for them, if you believe that, then you can show up in November and vote.
Look in camera 2 as we get out of here and tell this audience 2 things that you want them to take away from what are the 2 most salient points that you want them to take away from this conversation?
So first, if you do not own Bell Hooks' All About Love, go buy that book. She talks about this idea of a love ethic. And she says when you're driven by a love ethic, you attract other bearers of light to you. And I think in this moment, we need to recognize we're not in this by ourselves, that when we speak up about the communities that we deserve, we attract other folks to us. The second thing I would say is, this is a dirty little secret about politics. candidates don't win elections. You certainly need a good candidate with a good message. But I've seen a lot of bad candidates with bad messages win elections. What candidates need are you. Sometimes donors win. Oh, he was, Jesus Christ. Barely won that one. But what we need is you. And you're not showing up just for a candidate up and down the ballot. You're showing up for you. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. Malcolm Kenyatta, thank you. State Representative, Pennsylvania.
Jonathan Clark is an Emmy Award-winning journalist and writer who has worked in broadcasting and marketing for more than 35 years. He's a seasoned professional communicator who specializes in news analysis, strategic communications, broadcast, and print journalism. Jonathan has been a news reporter and producer throughout the Midwest and Mid-South. He passionately delivers high-value, first-rate reporting to each project he engages in. Jonathan joins Politics in Color as a featured anchor reporter.
We are Politics in Color, and we plan to be with you for the next 100 and more days of this U.S. presidential election.
There are several administrations where Republicans, in fact, had power. What did they do for black people while they had the power, while they had the gavels, while they had the Oval Office?
President, best economy ever for black people.
That's not true. I mean,
What candidate that if they put up would concern you the most?
Well, I think Kamala, for the simple reason that it's the least amount of revision that has to be done.
Kamala Harris is a legitimate left-wing political person. I mean, you look at every crazy idea that comes from the left, she hasn't just said, I'm for them. She's voted for them.
Look, unless you happen to be a big tech billionaire or a Mexican drug lord, and by the way, if you're either of those, you probably ought to vote Democrat because your life has gotten much better.
We're all in the same boat, right? 401ks and IRAs are very revolutionary.
We may be all in the same boat, but we're residing in different cabins.
Now what's coming up next on the docket is for Donald Trump Jr. to come. As you can see, his dad behind us in the box with the entire family, and he's got other politicians there that are also on the docket, but just here to support him.
I ran for president with my vision, and it overlaps heavily with President Trump's vision, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help him succeed.
Character still counts, and I worried about the character of Donald Trump and leading our nation. I'm a Republican. I want to vote for a Republican, but I've indicated that I don't want to support somebody who's been a convicted felon.
You got to vote. And so at the end of the day, that's what you got to do. Where you land is where you land.
Guess we're at the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. We'll be in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. We're traveling along with this process as it happens.
One of the things that I really am looking forward to doing with this platform through Politics in Color is explaining to our audience, to our constituents, the why.
2045, it's projected that folks of color will be the majority, not the collective minority. So the politicians know this. And so if we're smart, we're going to make that investment in our politics, in going out there and voting and getting involved, because that's what makes a difference.
En nuestra democracia, su voto importa. Fortalece a nuestra comunidad y a nuestro país. Haga oír su voz. Regístrese. Diríjase a sus estaciones de radio y televisión locales para obtener informes confiables sobre los candidatos y los temas. Visite vote411.org para saber qué hay en su boleta y para elaborar un plan para votar el 5 de noviembre o antes. Este mensaje es provisto por la National Association of Broadcasters y de esta estación.
Tell me what it is you do.
We're a broadcast engineering and distribution firm. And we also like to say that we produced some of the world's most watched events. And that means everything from a one-camera shoot to rolling in a mobile truck that's an expando. That means everything from rolling in a satellite truck to coordinating your fiber so that you can be your broadcast can be seen anywhere in the world. Anything from an edit to bringing in producers to help get your concept off of paper or out of your mind onto the screen. So we consider ourselves to be a 360-degree communications company.
What was the magic moment for you? Magic moment, breakthrough, big break for you, and maybe what was the big break for Blake Hahn?
We got a chance to produce live television in Russia and Cuba. And so if you can produce content in communist countries that the world can see, you can do this anywhere.
When did you get the notion that sports was an area where you could diversify? The first notion.
Well, when you think about sports, and you think about sports in the US, there are so many sporting areas to go into. I mean, we got a call from NASCAR. Whoever thought we'd be doing NASCAR? I certainly didn't, but NASCAR ended up being a huge client of ours, okay? When they first started the NFL Network, we were doing a lot of NFL Network stuff during preseason. That also led us into doing a lot more NCAA, so everything kind of fed off of the other one. It was, if people said, oh, well, you can do this, well, you can do this also. And so after a while, it just expanded to we've actually done every sport that the NCAA has. I think they got 48 collegiate sports. We've done all 48 of those sports.
When do you begin to hatch this vision for Blake Hahn Media?
A gentleman asked me to come and join the Gore Lieberman campaign in 2000. So that was my first opportunity to work in a presidential campaign. And I was responsible for all the live shots, and I built a studio in Nashville. So if you remember, that was the Hanging Chads campaign.
Yeah.
We thought that we were going to go to the White House. We ended up without jobs. So I moved back to Washington and started working for a company called CONUS, which is no longer in business. And at CONUS, they hired me as a sales engineer. So I said, okay, this is what I need. I said, I'm going to do this for 1 year. I'm going to actually learn how to sell the services that help broadcasting move. And so after 1 year, I resigned. I moved to Atlanta. We started Blake Hahn Media.
What new spaces can you even envision being available in this ever-changing field that we're in?
Well, I'm excited about these new technologies, and I'm excited about some of the young guys that I have met who are engineers, because they're helping me really understand what the possibilities are for this whole next generation. Space science, that's really what it is. It's a whole nother realm. It's a whole nother way to receive content, to send content, to experience content. It's, as much as it's changed over the last 30 years, it's nothing like the way it's going to change over the next 10.
We are Politics in Color, and we plan to be with you for the next 100 and more days of this U.S. presidential election.
There are several administrations where Republicans, in fact, had power. What did they do for black people while they had the power, while they had the gavels, while they had the Oval Office?
President, best economy ever for black people.
Well, that's not true. I mean,
What candidate that if they put up would concern you the most?
Well, I think Kamala, for the simple reason that it's the least amount of revision that has to be done.
Kamala Harris is a legitimate left-wing political person. I mean, you look at every crazy idea that comes from the left,
She hasn't just said I'm for them. She's voted for them.
Look, unless you happen to be a big tech billionaire or a Mexican drug lord, and by the way, if you're either of those, you probably ought to vote Democrat because your life has gotten much better.
We're all in the same boat, right? 401ks and IRAs are very revolutionary.
We may be all in the same boat, but we're residing in different cabins.
Now what's coming up next on the docket is for Donald Trump Jr. to come. As you can see, his dad behind us in the box with the entire family, and he's got other politicians there that are also on the docket, but just here to support him.
I ran for president with my vision, and it overlaps heavily with President Trump's vision, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help him succeed.
Character still counts, and I worried about the character of Donald Trump and leading our nation. I'm a Republican. I want to vote for a Republican, but I've indicated that I don't want to support somebody who's been a convicted felon.
You got to vote. And so at the end of the day, that's what you got to do. Where you land is where you land.
Guess we're at the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. We'll be in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. We're traveling along with this process as it happens.
One of the things that I really am looking forward to doing with this platform through Politics in Color is explaining to our audience, to our constituents, the why.
2045, it's projected that folks of color will be the majority, not the collective minority. So the politicians know this. And so if we're smart, we're going to make that investment in our politics, in going out there and voting and getting involved, because that's what makes a difference.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
We're back here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois, at the United Center. Wilmer Leon here with my guest, Rear Admiral retired Mike Smith. He is the president and founder of the National Security Leaders for America. Admiral Smith, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Many would say we didn't expect that this would be the national security year that it has become. A lot of things going on out there. What do you see in the immediate future looking like?
I think the immediate future, given how close the race is potentially frightening. The concept that right now Donald Trump is tied to get back to the Oval Office and what he will do to our security, what he did in his first term, if he tries to repeat any of that, given how the stakes are so high with national security right now, that's just frightening to me.
What do you see as being the three leading issues? What are as a national security expert, what were the three most concerning things that he actually did or tried to do in his term?
Well, I think without doubt, his friendship to Putin and his encouragement of Putin, and not doing anything when they invaded Crimea, and then going on and saying that, if NATO allies don't pay up, Putin can do whatever they want with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, so the whole concept of NATO as an organization and a treaty that is group that has kept us safe since World War II, he will undermine. Then Ukraine itself, there's no way he won't walk away from that. So, but another national security concern that really upsets me is he's going to politicize the military.
Okay.
If you take a look at Project 2025, right in there, it talks about how 3 and 4 stars all will have to have whatever they're talking about cleared by him. The people that he'll put into power, the civilians running the Ministry of the Department of Defense will end up doing whatever he wants. So I think it's just such a fundamental threat at home as well as abroad.
Does he confuse the concept of commander-in-chief with running the Department of Defense? Because, as I understand it, the Department of Defense is supposed to be more on the civilians, in civilian control, but as commander-in-chief, that's still not his job to run the Department of Defense. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And I think that how he gets around that is he will put people in there that'll do whatever he says. Now, in his first term, he had some amazing guardrails, some people who were really respected. General Mattis was a hero to many people, me included. And so having him there as a Secretary of Defense, you knew he wasn't going to do just whatever Donald Trump said. Having General Kelly as his Chief of Staff, you knew that truth to power would happen. Whether then President Trump wanted to hear it, those people would tell him what they needed to hear. And if you look at the people that were in the administration those last few weeks, he put in puppets. He put in people who would just say yes. And that's just frightening for what it means for the Department of Defense should he return to the Oval Office.
Where do you see the developing issues with China fitting into the forward look in terms of national security?
Well, I think that one of the things that the vice president doesn't get a lot of credit for, because people don't understand, is that in fact she has great international prowess. She's gone to the Indo-Pacific, I think it's like 4 times. She's met with over 120 leaders, so she has been there and she has taken China to task in the region for what they're trying to do with the South China Sea. You just saw on the news today how the Chinese rammed a Philippine ship. We're a treaty ally with the Philippines. If they're attacked, we're required. It's not an option. We're required to come to the defense. So China is constantly provoking a major power war. And of the 2 people that could be in the Oval Office, Kamala Harris has the perspective, the calmness, and the intelligence to handle that right.
How do we square the current policy towards China as it relates to Taiwan with the One China policy?
Our Taiwan Relations Act says that the military must be prepared to come to the defense of Taiwan, if China tries to forcefully take it. That has always been there, even when we had the One China policy. So the idea is if the People's Republic of China and Taiwan become friends and merge together, and it's a peaceful a merging of the 2 entities, then that's great. No one has a problem with that. What we have a problem with is what China's doing, the intimidation, the threats, the real potential for an invasion. We can't let that happen, and that's the problem with the Ukraine. What Russia invading the Ukraine, and if Trump had his way, us not doing anything would be a complete invitation for China to invade Taiwan. It'd be like they didn't do anything with Ukraine when Russia did it. Why can't we take Taiwan back?
As you mentioned NATO in the first bit of this conversation as it relates to Ukraine, and the Biden administration has been involved in trying to expand NATO beyond the North Atlantic Treaty Organization into having incursion into other regions of the world. What do you think about an expansion of NATO?
Well, I don't think you're really expanding NATO by going into other areas.
Okay.
It's still all about our alliances and supporting our allies wherever they happen to be operating. But so, for example, when we were attacked 9/11, and then we went into Afghanistan, NATO came with us. It wasn't part of Europe. It was way outside Europe, but we were attacked. They felt that they had an obligation as our treaty ally, and they came to our aid. So that's why I'm saying that people just don't understand how important NATO is. It's there for us as much as it is, them wanting something from us. They are there to help us as well.
And as we look at what's happening right now in the European Union, there's a lot of dissension within Germany, within France, within Britain about defending Europe. Macron has been talking about they need their own defense force. What do you see happening with Europe as it relates to staying in NATO and just in terms of this discussion about the EU developing its own defense mechanisms?
Well, I think that the two are separate issues. That we always have the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They'll all be our treaty allies. If independently, they also want to boost their militaries so they can be involved in issues that maybe don't meet what NATO would look at. We should be all for that. We want them to have a strong defense. The more that they can do to build their defenses and make Europe even safer, that we should be encouraging that completely.
When you have the opportunity to talk right now to Vice President Harris, the soon-to-be Democratic nominee for president, what are the 2 or 3 real issues that you are going to want to be sure that she understands as it relates to future threats and as it relates to national security?
Well, I think that, first of all, anything I would tell her, I know she knows.
Okay.
She is wicked smart. She spent the last decade immersed in foreign policy. When she was in the Senate, she was on the Select Intelligence Committee. That's seeing the most sensitive information about what's really going on in the world. And she was in on that. And now she just spent 4 years going to all of the meetings in the White House, involved in the most sensitive discussions, participating when our country was working to develop a coalition to defend Israel from the Iranian attacks. She was part of that. She's been out there in the Munich Security Conference, talking to our allies, making sure that they were there to support the Ukraine. And now we just learned, with this hostage deal, that while she was at a security conference, she's talking to these foreign leaders to help facilitate this dialogue that ended up getting this historic prisoner swap. Kamala Harris doesn't need any advice from me. She's ready to go. If I'm giving advice, I'm giving advice to that undecided voter that there is no choice when it comes to national security and safety of our country.
Final question. In terms of what's happening in Gaza, there are a lot of protests in terms of the United States policy supporting the genocide in Gaza, but there's not the affirmative or the perception from those in the electorate are that the United States isn't listening to its people who want us to put an end to that genocide.
I think that what Hamas did in the invasion of Israel is reprehensible and it's inexcusable. But they knew what they were doing. It's such a small area of the Gaza that it required much more finesse and surgical attacks on Hamas than I think Israel was prepared to do. One day they'll have to go back and do a hot wash and find out what their mistakes were. But this murdering or all of these innocent children and families that are caught up in the conflict, that's not excusable either. So we're seeing today that there's hope that this peace process might be working and we might see a ceasefire. I sure hope that happens.
Admiral Smith, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us here at Politics in Color. Folks, Wilmer Leon here. Politics in Color is where you are, coming to you live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois. Stay with us. There's a lot more in store.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
Welcome back to the Democratic National Convention, and we are joined by a very special guest, actually one that we tried to get a hold of when we were in Milwaukee for the RNC. We are happy to be joined by Mayor Johnson, Cavalier Johnson of Milwaukee. Thank you for joining us on Politics in Color.
Happy to join you.
Happy for you to be in Chicago, a little bit outside of your area, and you're coming off of a big convention yourself in your city.
Yeah, we are. Just a little bit outside, although, my dad's from Chicago, my wife's from Chicago. So I've got.
So you're a Bears fan.
I got. Well, no. Let's not go that far. Okay. I like the winning team. Joe, just kidding.
That's great. So now that you're here at the convention and you can see how it's unfolding, it's larger than the RNC, which was in your city. The news around the Democratic National Convention is the amount of money that's being brought into the city of Chicago. Milwaukee received a lot of money as well to have the convention there. How do you feel about how that played out?
Well, this was our first large-scale convention. I say it's the biggest thing that Milwaukee's ever done in terms of hosting the Republican National Convention just last month in the city. We had an opportunity there to bring in tens of thousands of people from across the country and around the world, and certainly there was an economic impact. We'll see what it looks like for the remainder of the economy. We do have some preliminary numbers from the hotels. When you compare the week that the RNC took place from 2023 to 2024 when it happened, there was a $5 million worth of spend in 2023 and $19 million worth of spend in 2024. So that's some significant increase. We'll see what the rest of the economy bears out over the course of the next couple of months when those numbers are crunched.
Now, obviously, when we were in Milwaukee, in your city, for the RNC, we had no idea that we were going to be switching up presidents here at the Democratic National Convention. What's your overall thought, especially for people of color in that city of Milwaukee that you represent? What's the energy like now that there's been a switch in candidates?
So all of us, myself included, in Milwaukee, appreciate and value President Joe Biden, who is the consummate statesman and has done such a great job leading our country. I am super excited to hear him speak tonight and the message that he will deliver, not just for Democrats, but for Americans. But as it relates to the change at the top of the ticket, the first place that Kamala Harris landed when she became the presumptive nominee on the Democrat side was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And she had held a huge rally in our community in a suburb called West Dallas, right next door to the city of Milwaukee. And the base there was so energized. Thousands of people across, all sectors of our community, rich and poor, black and white, Asian, Latino, gay and straight. Everybody was there to support the vice president. So the energy level is very, very high in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, and I think across the United States.
And I asked that question because obviously people of color sometimes have different issues that matter to them when they start to go to the voting booth. So the energy that we hear has happened since Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is on this journey is important. And when we were in Milwaukee, we talked to locals. We visited lots of local shops and some very good food in Milwaukee from some of the black-owned restaurants. But some of their mindset was, why is the convention here? Why are we having the RNC in Milwaukee when the people that are representing the RNC don't necessarily represent the issues that we face in our community?
Sure, and that's a great question. So we, of course, won the Democratic National Convention in 2020, and unfortunately, because of COVID, it just wasn't able to pan out the way that we wanted to, that I wanted to happen. In 2024, we had the opportunity to host the Republican National Convention, have a second kick at the cat, and this is the thing for me. It was not just about the RNC, right? Certainly, I've got political differences with the Republican Party platform, absolutely with their leading candidate, Mr. Trump. However, hosting a large-scale political convention like that only helps to elevate Milwaukee. And by all accounts, from people that I've talked to from around the country and around the world that visited Milwaukee during that week, many of them had never been to Milwaukee or Wisconsin for that matter, their first time, and they all were blown away. So what I would like for that to happen is for it to create a virtuous economic cycle where people continue to come back. They continue to spend more dollars in our community, creating more jobs and circulating more dollars for businesses on the ground and workers on the ground who live in Milwaukee. It's not just about the RNC, it's about what comes next. It's about the large-scale political, business, sports, entertainment, trade shows, and things like that that'll come after hosting such an event.
So with an event like that, obviously there's contract money that comes. How much of that, and I'm not asking for percentages, but when people say, gosh, there's more security, oh, I can't get to my favorite restaurant, how many of those contracts, when you bring in a large convention like that, trickle down to the community, to some of the mom and pop shops?
Yeah, I don't have all that information at hand, but I mean, it is a very large...
Meaning, like, hopefully everyone is having a chance to eat off of those large million-dollar contracts.
Absolutely, and with some of our work, we help to boost the contract, right? It was $50 million rather since 2004 because of our efforts. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I went to Washington, D.C. lobbying members of Congress. We were able to get that $50 million increased to $75 million. So we had more spend going to a number of local companies on security, and not just security, but other pieces of that convention to make a successful convention for everybody that was involved. Doesn't matter if they were in the security business, doesn't matter if they're in the hospitality business, doesn't matter if they're in the food and beverage business as well. Everybody got the chance to take part and to take something home.
So what matters now most to the people of Milwaukee when they look at this ticket and they're going to the voting booth, and goodness, that's less than 3 months now. What's important to your constituents?
My constituents are going to want to know which candidate is going to work for them. Which candidate is interested in serving the people versus which candidate is more interested in serving themselves, right? And when you look at the policies of Kamala Harris and Governor Walz, what they want to do as president and vice president of this country, and you contrast that with what Donald Trump has proposed to do for this country and Senator J.D. Vance have proposed to do for this country, it's as clear as day. I mean, not even just, the deliverables, the actual deliverables that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have made for black people in this country. But when you look at, some of the nasty things that have been said and talked about on the Republican side towards, black people and Americans in general, there is a clear-cut choice for African Americans and people generally in this country about who should be leading us forward. And I think that person is Kamala Harris, and I really can't wait to elect her the 47th president of the United States.
What do you say to the people that say, oh, she was an attorney general, but she doesn't have enough experience? What do you say to the people that say, I don't really know her because in the role of vice president, you don't see them that much?
Well,
what do you say to the people that say, can a woman run this country?
Oh, a woman absolutely can run this country. I mean, just think about it. Women run so many things around us already. I mean, I can't even walk out of my house, right, without a woman's touch because a woman runs my house. I mean, inside of our government, whether it's elections, whether it's the Office of Equity and Inclusion, whether it's our Department of Neighborhood Services building inspectors, women run each and every single one of those very, very important divisions within my administration and more. So women absolutely can run this country. In terms of her being a prosecutor, yes, she was a prosecutor. That was her job, to make sure that communities were safe. And let me tell you, I mean, as a prosecutor, she took on people who were perpetrators, right? She took on people who were cheaters. She took on people who were fraudsters. And Donald Trump matches every single one. So she says it best. She knows his type. And there's nobody better positioned to prosecute the case against Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. And I can't wait to see her on that debate stage and take the case directly to him. And again, go on to become the president of the United States.
We know that as we hear at the Democratic National Convention, most of this week is, of course, rallying behind Vice President Harris, but also it's a send-off to President Joe Biden, who has been in politics for almost half a century. When we talk about communities of color, he's done a lot for Americans, but he's done a lot for diverse minority groups around our country.
Yeah, he has. And I mean, Joe Biden, my heart warms when I think about Joe Biden. It really, really does. Like, I feel like I'm a Joe Biden Democrat, and he's done so much in service to this country. I mean, just to even think about him getting into politics in the first place, right? It's because he was encouraged by Dr. King. That's why he's got a bust of Dr. Martin Luther King in the Oval Office right now, right? Just think about that. Just think about the deliverables that under his leadership have come to black people. If you're a young person looking to attend a historically black college or university, the most resources ever from the federal government happened under President Joe Biden's leadership. If you're somebody who was negatively affected by marijuana law, as black people have been in this country, well, the rescheduling of that, or attempted rescheduling of that, is happening under President Joe Biden. If you're a young girl and you're interested in becoming a lawyer, an attorney, or perhaps a judge, well, there's a black woman sitting on the United States Supreme Court right now because Joe Biden made a promise to do that. I mean, even with Kamala Harris, right? he said that he would select a black woman to be his running mate. And here is Kamala Harris, and she's going to be the 47th president of the United States of America. All these things go back to a single source. That's Joe Biden. That is Joe Biden. That I can't say enough about that, man. It gives me just goosebumps just thinking about him. He's done so much for this country, and all of us, each and every single one of us, has benefited from that man and his presidency and his leadership over the course of the last half century.
Before we let you go, what can we expect from Vice President Harris when she takes that stage on Thursday night?
When Vice President Harris takes the stage on Thursday night, I think she's going to showcase what we've seen over the course of the last number of weeks. Joy. She's going to showcase unity on the Democratic ticket.
Unity is what was here in 2008. Is that how you're feeling? President Obama, that was unity. It was hope. It was change. Are you feeling any of that?
Absolutely.
In that historical moment,
Absolutely.
It feels like we're coming full circle?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the rallies that she's got, I mean, as I said, the one that was in our community, every segment of society was represented there. Just like you saw in 2008 with Senator Obama at the time, who then went on to become president, right? With Kamala Harris, you're seeing the exact same thing. Like, people are coming out of the woodworks. There are more people standing on the outside than the inside of some of these venues, just because she's drawing out the best in America. And that's exactly what we need in this moment, especially with the challenge that we have with her opponent on the other side, who is self-serving and will be destructive to this country. And we don't want to go back. She says it best. We are not going back. We're not going back.
You kind of said that like President Obama says. We're not going back. Mayor Johnson, thank you so much for joining us here on Politics in Color. Good luck to you as mayor of Milwaukee. And I liked it enough, but I don't know when I'll be back. But thank you.
You got to come on back.
We'll come on back. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by Bit Central, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
I'm here with Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis, President and CEO of Black Press of America, National Publishers Association. Dr. Chavis, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. It's always good to be in your presence.
Well, you are too kind. You are too kind. So we're here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago at the United Center for 2024. November 5th, of course, is a big, big day. And with Vice President Harris now being on the ticket, in terms of the African American community and communities of color, what is in it for us?
Well, that's a very good question. It's a very timely question. This week at the DNC, we're going to see an array of leaders. Mm-hmm. You're going to see the President of the United States tonight, the former President of the United States tomorrow, and then another president on Wednesday. And then you're going to see the next President of the United States on Thursday, Kamala Harris. So what is it what is it? What are the consequences of that election for Black America? What is the consequences of that election for communities of color in the United States today? I just got to make a point. The Trump campaign is about the past. Mm-hmm. The Harris-Walz campaign is about the future. But the question is, where do we fit in the future? I know why you're asking the question. Track records are important. Over the last 3.5 years, childhood poverty has been cut in half. Mm-hmm. Over the last 3.5 years, Black unemployment has gone down to a record low. Over the last 3.5 years, historically Black colleges and universities have gotten billions of dollars that they should have gotten in the past. And again, I must say that the Biden-Harris administration probably did more for Black America than any other administration. So the question now is, how can Kamala Harris take that baton from President Biden, and then go forward? And as she goes forward, will she take Black America with her? Will the quality of life in our community improve? Will our children get an education where they can excel and become scholars? Will our seniors be able to get health care? Will they be able to get lower prescriptions on their drugs? Housing. We lost a lot during the housing crisis. They tell me that black wealth was cut in half during the housing crisis in 2008. Can we restore economic resiliency to the black community as a result of a Harris administration? Those are the questions. And I believe while she's, some in the mainstream media has criticized her for not having her policies out, she already put an economic policy out. But I think in her wisdom, she first had to build up all this enthusiasm that you see here. And the question is, what's going to happen after the convention? I know what's going to happen here. The question is, what is going to happen after this week? Will people go back to their communities and fight against some of this voter suppression? Will people go back and get young people engaged, Generation Z, millennials? When people get back, will they be able to stand on the front line? I'm going to tell you a true story. I'm from North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And in my involvement in the civil rights movement, I've been arrested 6 or 7 times.
A lot of times in Wilmington.
A lot of times in Wilmington, North Carolina. So the state of Georgia has passed a law that while the people are standing in line this year to vote in the hot sun, if you give somebody a bottle of water, you can be arrested. So I'm going to get I'm saying this in advance, I'm going to get a truckload of water.
Okay.
And I'm driving to a Georgia polling place. And I'm going to cut the engine off, and I'm going to let the people get some water. I'm going to challenge that law.
Now, that's direct action.
That's direct action.
That's direct action. And so with you talking about all the things that have been accomplished by the Biden-Harris administration and talking about the future for the African-American community, what are we demanding of her? It's wonderful that she went to Howard University. It's great that she's a part of the Divine Nine, as both of us are.
Yes.
But that's not going to feed the bulldog. What are we demanding of her, and who within the community, who's making those demands? Because one of the things that I have run up against is when I start talking to people in our community about policy, they start looking at me, why are you asking those questions? Are you afraid that Donald Trump is going to win? That's not the point. The point is, what am I getting from my vote?
Right. Policy determines the quality of life.
All the time.
And, you know, people complain about some of these voter depression measures. That's public policy.
Right.
You know, people complain. You know, let me put it this way, man. We can't be a race of complainers.
Right.
Now.
But we can be a race of demanders.
That's what I'm pointing to. We have to be a race of demanders. Freddie Douglass said it best. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And so when Kamala Harris assumes the power of the White House, we have to continue to place that demand. And the good news is I think she will welcome the demand.
Okay.
I don't think she's going to resist the demand. I know the sister personally. She comes from a great family and community in California. And I think if you look at the people around her, it looks a little different even from the people around Biden. So she's replenishing her campaign with people who not only want to respond to the demand, but make sure we deliver demand. So it's another thing, oh yeah, I hear the demands of the people, but what are we going to do about delivering for the demands of the people? And I have high confidence that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to deliver on the demands that are made on the Harris-Walz administration.
You've been and continue to be a frontline soldier, a frontline fighter. At this stage in your process, what gives you hope? What keeps you on the front line?
Well, I said when Barack Obama was elected that night that it was a fulfillment of Dr. King's dream. But I realized that Dr. King himself before he was assassinated in Memphis on April 4th, 1968, said that his dream was becoming a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Because while we dream about equality, while we dream about justice, while we dream about empowerment, the reality of our community is that we're still entrenched in poverty.
If I could jump in, please, because a lot of people, first of all, have never read the complete text of I Have a Dream.
That's correct.
They love to, that phrase doesn't come in till almost 2/3 of the way through the speech. And what a lot of people don't realize is the title was the juxtaposition against our reality, which was a horrific nightmare.
That's correct.
That's why he had to have the dream, because we're living a nightmare.
Right. And so you ask, what gives me hope?
What gives you hope?
Because I see the resurrection of the dream. I see the resurrection of hope. I see the resurrection of taking responsibility for our communities. It's just not about receiving handouts.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting hand-ups, push-ups,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I just want to make sure that I do have a caution.
Okay.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was excited.
Yes.
The polls said that Hillary Clinton was going to win. She would be the first woman president. What happened? Donald Trump played to his base the key of supremacy, the key of racism, the key of anti-Semitism. He played all of that, all those negative things. And all those negative things, if you're not careful, will overtake the positive things. So we got to be vigilant in 2024. Not just excited, because you don't want to repeat where Sister Harris wins the popular vote, but then Trump wins the Electoral College vote. So we got to be very strategic in our voter turnout.
There's another thing that happened in 2016.
Learn from history.
There's another thing that happened in 2016. Hillary Clinton ran a lousy campaign, took too many things for granted, didn't campaign in Michigan.
Because they overestimated their success.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I like about, as soon as Sister Harris was nominated, it was the first thing she said, we are the underdog.
Right.
She's not going around telling people, oh, you got nothing to worry about, we got this. No, we don't got it yet. We have to get it.
How energized are you with all of this enthusiasm? Because before President Biden stepped aside, there was a lot of hand-wringing. A lot of folks weren't nearly as enthusiastic as many people would have hoped there would have been. There has been this surge of enthusiasm. What does that say to you now?
Well, this is my analogy. While President Biden was deciding whether or not he was going to drop out, people got down on their knees and prayed. And I tell people all the time, be careful what you pray for, because God will answer your prayers. So what has happened was unexpected. That's why the Trump people are caught off guard. They don't know how to handle this. In fact, this energy is more than it was in 2008. Because you have to understand, people didn't really know if America was ready for a black president. So it was a grand surprise.
Right.
Now, people know that it's a possibility. And, of course, the opposition also knows it's a possibility. So this is going to be the title match. This is going to be the championship match. And the underdog right now is still Kamala Harris. And that's why I want to make sure we don't be so joyous that we lose sense of our responsibility to go out and make this work. I want to match her joy with our work.
As we wrap this up, if you would look into camera one, what are the two major things that you want the community to understand about where we are right now in this moment of history and what's at stake?
We're at a moment in history that we've never been before. Yes, we've had a black president before, but we're at a moment in history where having a black woman president, I must say this is the year of the black woman. Hear me now. The first conference call to raise all those millions of dollars was with black women. Now the donors are coming back. Why? Because they see the black community doing something unprecedented. And so, number one, we got to go out and vote. And number two, you got to make sure that everybody around you, in your family, in your church, in your sorority, in your fraternity, goes out and vote. We need the largest black voter turnout in American history in 2024.
Dr. Benjamin Chavis, as always, my brother. Thank you so much.
God
Greatly,
bless you.
greatly appreciate it. Folks, Wilmer Leon here. Politics and Color is where you are. You want to be sure you stay in this conversation. Stay with us.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
Welcome to Politics in Color. I'm Dara Kennedy, and I am here at the DNC headquarters for the week of the Democratic National Convention right here in Chicago. Specifically, I'm at McCormick Place, which is one of two locations that will be the center of everything that you need to know that's happening this week. Of course, the other is at the United Center, where you will see us all week. Me and Dr. Wilmer will be conducting interviews and going behind the scenes and hopefully asking the questions that matter to you. And why to you? Because we at Politics in Color understand that our voices might be a little bit different. Our needs and some of the issues that matter to us in our community may be a little different from what you're hearing on mainstream. So it is our mission this week to go behind the scenes, have those discussions, have interviews with people that matter and that may make you talk about what's going on really just 3 months ahead of the presidential election. So we want you to follow us across all of social media. We are at Politics in Color for all of our handles, but also follow us as we live stream this week. This is an historic moment, and we at Politics in Color have not missed that moment. We are rising to the occasion to bring you as much content as we can as possible. So visit us online. Visit us at digital at youtube.com, and also stream with us at youtube.com, as well as on our website, Politics in Color. So all of our handles, join us, but stay with us all week. Me and Dr. Wilmer Leon will be here between McCormick Place and the United Center and everywhere else that we can be in between for this moment that is happening before we see Vice President Kamala Harris officially accept the nomination for President of the United States. History is happening. Share it with us.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
Welcome back to the DNC. We are here at the United Center again, just preparing for this long week of convention activities. We continue to have great guests. We are now joined by Ophira Yahaskel. She's the Director of External Affairs for the Democratic Governors Association. And I was just talking to her saying that I walked by. You guys are doing a lot. The Governors Association, they have their own little special club that's happening here at the United Center. But how many governors are actually on premises here for the convention this week?
I think we've got over 20 governors, and that just goes to show the power of our party, how many are leading, and we're really excited to have them here in Chicago.
Well, also what shows the power of the Democratic Party or the position of governor is the fact that Vice President Harris, all of her potential picks for her running mate were all governors.
Exactly. They're the ones leading. They know how to win, and we couldn't be more excited that our former chair, Governor Tim Walz, has been added to the ticket and is her running mate. I think he demonstrates the power of Democratic governors across this country, that they know how to win, they get things done for people, and think that's a winning message, obviously, for the vice president. So we're so thrilled that he's on the ticket and going to make progress for people.
Although I assume your answer would have been the same if it was Governor Shapiro or if it was
I love seeing governors succeed at any level in any way. So yeah.
Right? Because what's that process like? Because when Americans saw the choices, it was really, people were like, well, I like this one and I like that one and maybe I like this one over here. Andy Beshear, Governor Beshear was also in the mix. There were so many in the mix. What's the process to get to Governor Tim Walz? And not from a Vice President Harris standpoint, but from the association standpoint.
Well, we're neutral in a selection like that, but I felt she couldn't make a wrong choice. And like you said, so many great choices. Governor Beshear, who is a red state Democratic governor, and I think shows that in this party, Democrats can win anywhere when they put their minds to it. So really great to see his name in the conversation, obviously. Governor Tim Walz has gotten a lot done for folks in Minnesota. But we're just glad that they're in the conversation and continue to be even after she's made the running mate selection. And like you said, you mentioned Governor Beshear. He was on stage last night. Governor Hochul was on stage last night. Looking forward to hearing from our host, Governor Pritzker, tonight. So I love that I can tick through so many names and have so many things to talk about all of them.
I guess my question also would be, so when I was thinking about it, I said, I like Governor Beshear, but I don't want him to leave Kentucky, right? Because you have to think about, it's a bigger picture. It's a strategy, right? Governor Shapiro, we could have lost him because we believe in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Senator Fetterman, that other things can get done. But is there chatter or conversation behind the scenes about, hey, now if, let's just say Beshear is chosen, we have to start looking in the pipeline, or what's then our plan going forward if that were to happen, especially like in a red state?
Well, I think luckily we've got Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman there. She is a wonderful star, a teacher herself, just like Governor Walz. But we weren't even thinking about that when it came to the process. I think we were just so, again, excited to see so many governors in the mix being discussed and having their records talked about. And again, I think they were in the conversation because they get things done and they know how to win. So it's so great that there's so many people who check both of those boxes that I think people are talking about.
And I think everyone, we are happy as Americans, right? And when I say we, I say the voting block of people feel good for any of those choices. Now, there has been chatter about why not Josh Shapiro, right? He's a Jewish man that would have been double history, so to speak. And again, I know that you're not the ticket, but again, with the Governors Association, is there ever talk about what these processes are like and what happens if like a Jewish, potential candidate would have been the running mate?
I mean, for us, no. But, Governor Shapiro has talked about how he loves being the governor of Pennsylvania, and he's still got a lot to do. Yeah. And I think has already gotten a lot done in 2 years. As a Jewish person myself, I love the fact that he talks about his faith so forwardly. I think make a point to in Philly to do that. So I think he's another great example of the leadership in this party on a number of different fronts. But as himself talked about, having a lot more to do in Pennsylvania. And so we're excited to see what he does. Like Governor Walz said in Philly, if a bridge breaks down, that's the guy you want to call.
Yeah, I was there when he said that. I was like, that's a very good point, because a bridge actually broke down last year, Governor Shapiro. I think a star in your party, and you say that, are they all stars you?
To me, they're stars. They shine bright.
So we can't take away Governor Hochul because we need her in New York. One of my, as I looked to the future and I was looking at Vice President Harris's list, what was missing was a woman. And I thought instantly about Governor Maura Healey out of Massachusetts, who I thought would have been a phenomenal, just to even have her name in the ring as an openly gay, the first, governor and in Massachusetts. She's a rock star. How do you? And you can't sit here and tell me she's okay.
I love Governor Healey. No, you can't even tell me to pick. We have 8 incredible female Democratic governors. Tomorrow, we're actually having a panel with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and all 8 of them to talk about the power of female executive leadership. And I think, obviously, like you just said, there's no more incredible time to be having that conversation than right now. So I can't pick a favorite. They're all my favorites. I love them all. And we've got eight incredible Democratic governors who have incredible friendship amongst each other. And excited to see more of them. Again, another one, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham speaking tonight, so we're super excited to see her.
Are there
take
any
the stage
women
tonight.
of color governors?
She's the first Hispanic governor in the country, I believe, Democratic governor in the country. So we've got Lujan Grisham in New Mexico.
That is amazing. So what's your goal this week?
I want people to talk about what stars we've got in the Democratic Governors Association, that there's so many of us, and that they are, frankly, I think, some of the strongest messengers in this party, and that they know how to win. And I think, like I said, on that combination of protecting freedoms and delivering for the middle class. So if we come out at the end of this week and people are still talking about Democratic governors, I'm like, my box is checked.
I saw Governor Whitmer and Governor Shapiro having a chat, and I almost wanted to pull out my phone on the floor, and I said, this is the future of the Democratic Party. But there are so many stars, I think, that the Democrats can feel good about what the future is like. So 7 women?
8 women.
8 women and 1
governors.
of color.
Yeah.
Okay. I see you. And so what the end goal this week is obviously to get the momentum behind Vice President Harris.
Yeah.
Is there a message that you all are pushing this week?
Well, I think also that we have 11 governor's races this year. I think many people
important.
don't obviously pay attention to the down ballot. The presidential race is obviously important, but we have 11. In New Hampshire, we might have
11 gubernatorial races.
11 gubernatorial races this year. We've got North Carolina, which is a really big one. A great Democratic governor there, Roy Cooper. Current Attorney General Josh Stein, who's our nominee. Wonderful Attorney General who's running against the Lieutenant Governor, who is a really extreme conspiracy theorist Republican. So we're taking that race seriously. It's our top one, but think we'll be able to hang on to it.
What are your top 3 races out of the 11?
Would be North Carolina's the top. New Hampshire's our big flip opportunity with Chris Sununu retiring. And then Washington State, like I said, we've got a great governor, Jay Inslee, there, who's served 3 terms and looking to have a third or add Attorney General Bob Ferguson to be the governor there.
Battleground states?
North Carolina is the battleground.
That one? Okay, that's the one. Okay, well, push that message so we know, and you just let our viewers know, too, on Politics and Color. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for stopping by. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Stay with us.
In our democracy, your vote matters. It makes our community and country stronger. So make your voice heard. Get registered. Turn to your local TV and radio stations for trusted reporting on the candidates and issues. Visit vote411.org to learn what's on your ballot and make a plan to vote on or before November 5th. This message is furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by Bit Central, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
We're back here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois at the United Center. My guest is Sheriff Gary L. McFadden. He is the Sheriff of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department in North Carolina. Sheriff McFadden, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you all for having me.
We're here again at the Democratic National Convention. Vice President Kamala Harris on Thursday will be the nominee of the Democratic Party. Why is this election so important to communities of color?
Well, we needed our voices to be heard. We need issues in our community that need to be addressed, and we believe that she's the best person to address them and also to hear from us. And we're going to work with her in order for her to hear with us. But we want that.
You were the first African American elected to the position of Sheriff of Mecklenburg County.
Absolutely.
She, if elected, will be the first woman of color. What is the significance of that? Is it more than symbolism?
It is. It is a dream of our ancestors. Most people don't get that. It is a dream that she's probably had. It's a dream that I definitely had, but I would never think that I would be the sheriff of this county. I didn't want to be the sheriff. I have a 43-year history in law enforcement, and I was an officer before. But being the first African-American sheriff, black sheriff, I can address the issues that are not often addressed in our communities, and I have addressed those.
What do you say to those that will make the point that in some unfortunate circumstances, African American police officers are harder on African Americans than their white counterparts? There are those who will say that's because they want to be sure they stay in the club. They want to be sure that they aren't singled out. Have you found that to be an issue, or is that more myth than fact?
It is more myth than fact.
Okay.
We just have to do our job. But what happens is the community expected us to be more lenient when it comes to them. But I think that we and the community, I know we do it in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. I don't have a problem with my community. I don't have a problem with addressing actually homeless people or unhoused people voted for me. We have an excellent track record with our community in Charlotte. So it's just being there and being honest and being true to what you're doing.
And as you have talked with Vice President Harris, as you have seen the policy initiatives, let's talk about crime in the community. What are some of the things that we need to start as a community demanding of an administration, no matter who it is? What are some of the things that we need to start demanding of an administration to deal with the issues of crime in our communities?
Well, first of all, we're going to have to get a handle on fentanyl. Fentanyl is killing our community. We're going to have to talk about the violence and the guns in our community. But then one of the things that they should address every day is mental health.
Thank you.
That has to be addressed in the community. The other things that sheriffs want across America is what they call safer borders. Those are the issues. But we would love and we invite them to sit down with the sheriffs of America. And like I told everybody, I want to have these candid conversations with our political leaders, including whoever will be our president or vice president.
Mental health in jails. We need more mental health care before the individual gets to jail. That will help keep a lot of people out of jail.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, and here's why. Imagine me being the first black sheriff, created a behavioral health for men and women inside of the detention center that nobody else has in North Carolina. Now, out of the 100 sheriffs in North Carolina, now the state is asking me, which I will do.
Wait, before you get to that, what are the elements, what are the salient elements of that program?
Well, the elements are that, you mean how we take care of them?
Yes.
We first talk about your family. We connect with the family. We find out what the issues are. And then if this housing unit is not your traditional housing unit,
okay,
these ladies and men are free to come. And here's what we have done. We don't use the word inmate inside of my detention center. And I said detention center because we don't use the word jail. You will never see anybody mistreated. I have probably fired more people than any other sheriff. But when you find out the root cause of it and give them the freedom, give them the medication, and give them the resources, they become better citizens.
Now, when you say resources, resources take us to budgets.
Budget.
And I say all the time that budgets are numeric representations of priority. So we hear all the time, whether it's the school budget, whether it's the incarceration, whether it's the police force, we don't have enough money. So how do you get your city council, your mayor, your governor to see to it that you have the resources that you need to implement the programs that you want to implement?
What I did first is, well, let me back up just a minute.
Okay.
There's a machine in Washington, D.C. that prints money. It's called the U.S. Mint. It is the control mechanism of our society. Imagine this. We don't have to wait for money to grow. We make money. So why don't we have the necessary resources? And I get that from my father, and I have no idea why he always said that. But they make money. Now, I created the behavioral health unit without any additional money from the county and from the city. And I showed them, I reallocate certain things inside my agency to provide the necessary resources for my citizens. That's the start. After that, you have to show your city and county officials, not at a rally, not at a panel discussion, each and every day why money and resources are important.
You talk here about fentanyl and an opioid crisis.
Absolutely.
If we were to get rid of fentanyl tomorrow and not address the mental health issues that are driving people to feel compelled to use drugs in the first place, fentanyl will be replaced by something else.
You're right. But the community, law enforcement, and the justice system need to work together. We fight each other all the time about small issues. If we get rid of one issue and support our citizens returning home, we will be better. We don't often do that. The returning citizen is denied so many resources after they leave our center. We have people breaking out windows to stay inside the detention center after they leave because they get better care and custody at a detention center, which is an embarrassment.
So how do you go about changing the mindset of the elected officials in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County to dedicate the resources? Because again, a lot of it, I believe, has to do with preventing the crime before the crime is committed.
You're exactly right. I hate to say this. We in law enforcement have to educate our elected officials.
Okay.
We put it in their face every day. This is why it's happening, okay? Believe it or not.
Oh, but see, now you're getting soft on crime.
No.
That's always the push.
It is.
That's always the pushback. Oh, you want to coddle the inmate.
Yes.
Or the detainee. And you want to get soft on crime now.
No, well, here's what I say to them then. If you don't want me to do this, tell me this. How would you want me to prepare your neighbor? Because they're going to be your neighbor. So how would you want me to prepare me? If you don't want me to take care of this guy now, take away fentanyl, take away the violence and all this stuff, then what do you want me to do? You don't have the answer. You're not working towards an answer. I'm working towards an answer. This is 43 years of experience talking.
And obviously you have found yourself, you're still in office, so there has been some success.
Oh, it's success, and they love it.
And so broadening that program from a Charlotte, Mecklenburg County program to a North Carolina program to a national program.
It takes somebody to say, we will take a chance on it. Believe it or not, right now, inside my detention center, I have a business school. Business school inside a detention center, we help people with mental health first. After mental health, we tell them about the drug abuse. We help them with the drug abuse, but then we give them hope. We don't give anybody hope. So imagine that you leave my detention center with a website and an LLC and a license.
And let's talk about recidivism.
Recidivism.
One of the ways that we measure success in detention centers is the recidivism rate.
National rate is 44%. Charlotte, Mecklenburg, 29%.
Outstanding. So if you would look into camera 2, and what are the 2 most salient points that you want this audience to take away from this conversation?
That we're going to have to allow the sheriffs of America to be their voice. And we're going to have to listen to them. We're talking about mental health and we're talking about fentanyl, and those 2 things are going to destroy our community. So listen to your local sheriff, support your local sheriffs, and have a conversation with your local sheriff and allow us to educate you just a little bit more.
Sheriff Gary McFadden, Charlotte Mecklenburg County Sheriff, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Folks, Wilmer Leon here. We're here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois at the United Center. Stay here with Politics in Color. There's a whole lot more in store.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
Here at politicsincolor.com, politicsincolor.com. We are live coming to you from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois. Congressman Glenn Ivey, 4th District of Maryland, Prince George's County.
Thank
you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
One of the questions that I've been asking most of my guests, why is this 2024 election so important to communities of color?
Well, 2 sets of reasons. One is that there's a lot of positive things that are coming out of the Biden-Harris era from the legislation they put in place, trying to keep the cost down on prescription drugs. Insulin was the first one, but there are others coming now. Trying to continue expanding internet access so everybody has the opportunity to use it, because it's not optional anymore. You need it for homework, you need it for doctor's appointments, you need it for all kinds of things. So they're trying to build that out as well. And abortion rights and reproductive rights.
Why is that so hard to do? People would think in this country that internet access would be a given.
Yeah, I mean it's really just comes down to money. And that's not one of the only pieces that we need. Road repair, bridges, tunnels,
infrastructure
and the like.
Across the board.
Infrastructure is huge. We have underfunded it for decades now. The Trump administration, every day was infrastructure day. They never got it done. Biden got it done, and now we're rolling the money out into jurisdictions across the country. So all of those reasons, I think, are it's just a handful. The unemployment's at low levels, lowest in 50 years, lowest for African Americans maybe ever. Inflation's going down. Interest rates are going to come down again in September. I know, not everybody's benefiting yet from the economic piece, but as the vice president rolled out, trying to do things to target to deal with rent and mortgages so people can get into their first homes, trying to help people with student loan debt. These Trump Supreme Court judges keep striking down those opportunities to do that, but we're going to keep trying it. And there's just opportunities like that across the board that we need to get done. We need another term to get it out so everybody can benefit.
There's been an awful lot of energy at this convention. 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, things were a little flat, let's say. And then there's been a turnaround. Talk about that dynamic, but more importantly, how does the party continue that momentum?
Well, I think Kamala Harris has been doing a lot of the right things, like day in and day out. Going out and doing the rallies, reaching out to people where they are, speaking directly to the people, and explaining what she wants to do. I really like this going to Milwaukee today, going back to where the Republicans had their convention, to go talk about it so she could draw the direct contrast to what Democrats will do as opposed to what Republicans would do. And, I think Trump, has been frankly kind of shady about what he would actually do if he got in office. This Project 2025 piece, he tried to distance himself from it, but everybody working on it either was on his campaign staff or in his administration. And they're talking about eliminating Department of Education, cutting 70,000, cutting federal government jobs across the board, all kinds of things like that would be devastating to community, especially in my area where we have a lot of federal government employees.
If you would look into camera 3 and tell the nation 3 things about why this election in 2024 is so significant, why they need to get out and vote.
Well, first of all, I think from an economic standpoint, there's a huge impact that's been moving in the right direction for not just the United States, but for the African American community specifically. We want to make sure we keep making that happen. And I talked about some of the pocketbook issues a few minutes ago, keeping down pharmaceutical costs, insulin, for example, making sure we can help people get their first-time homes when they are trying to get the money up front to do it, making sure people have the opportunity to work on these projects that he's rolling out, because we benefit from the infrastructure, from having the new bridges and roads and the like, but there are people who do the construction work to make that happen. All of them benefit from it as well. So I think that's one piece that's really helpful. Reproductive rights is another big one. A woman ought to have a right to control her own body. She doesn't need Donald Trump or any of his buddies in there in the room, but telling her and her doctor what she needs to do with her body. And they're talking about absolute bans on abortion, even in cases of rape and incest at the federal level, which I think is wrong. We need to trust women and allow them to control what they do with their bodies. Limiting access to whether it's contraceptives or the like, at some points where it's really just not the government's business. We ought to leave it alone. Republicans keep trying to get into the bedroom. They keep trying to take books off the library shelves. Or Toni Morrison, they're trying to ban. I mean, just crazy stuff like that. So that's another piece. And then lastly, I think, I don't trust Donald Trump with the power that the presidency has. Okay. He tried to steal the last election. He had the military. He tried to talk the military into going out and seizing ballots. he called Raffensperger, the guy who governed the elections in Georgia, called him up and said, find me 11,000 votes so he could try and steal the Georgia piece. And he had fake slates of electors to come in and try and take the race away from the Biden-Harris team, who'd won it fair and square. So that's just three.
Okay.
I mean, we could go on for a while, but
you got things to do.
Suffice it to say, this is a big election, probably the biggest in our lifetimes, and I've been here a long time, so we need you to come out and vote.
Congressman Glenn Ivey, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Maryland's 4th District, Prince George's County, Maryland. Greatly appreciate it, Glenn. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, Politics in Color. Politics in Color. We're here at the Democratic National Convention. Keep it locked right here. There's more.
It's the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Join the conversation with web channel Politics in Color, powered by BitCentral, Globecast, Blakehon Media, and Aza Group.
We're here live at the Democratic National Convention. Chicago, Illinois is where we are. The house that Mike built.
Yes.
Mayor Brandon Scott, Baltimore, Maryland. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, brother. Thank you for having me.
The first question that I've been asking most of my guests is, why is the 2024 election so important to communities of color?
Well, I think that we have to understand what's on the ballot here, right? When you think about the failed former president and what he represents and what his vice president nominee represents, they represent a group of people who are now, and I said this earlier at the North Carolina State Breakfast, I am the grandson of a Republican pig farmer from North Carolina. My grandfather, if he were here, wouldn't recognize his party. They are now a group of people who want to take this country back to not just Jim Crow, but to post-Reconstruction time. That's what's on the ballot. When on the other side, you have Vice President Kamala Harris, who has worked and is the most qualified person to take this job ever running for it, probably in the history of this country. But also when you look at the record, right, of what happened when she was vice president, the lowest black unemployment level the country has ever seen. Historic records of investment into HBCU, student loan debt, a cap in insulin. The way that this presidential administration and under her leadership, the Office of White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention has worked with mayors like myself and others to focus on the completeness of reducing violence in our communities and seeing them drop historically. Like in my city of Baltimore, where we had the largest single-year reduction in homicides ever last year, 20%, and we're beating that at 28%. That's what's on the ballot. Whether we have a dictator or not is on the ballot. Whether our mothers, our wives, our daughters have the freedom over their bodies is on the ballot. It's that simple. And we know that black women have saved this country from itself time and time again. And it's now time for us to elect one of them to lead this country, and it's far overdue.
You are the grandson of a Republican pig farmer,
yes, sir,
in North Carolina. I am the grandson of a Republican who came off of the Dvorak plantation in Greenwood, South Carolina, in he got to Howard University in 1901.
Yes, sir.
Your grandfather's Republican Party, as you were just alluding to.
Yeah.
My grandfather's Republican Party.
This ain't it.
What do you think has been the key to the shift in the dynamic?
Well, I think that when you have these small sects and you have these folks who now are being pressured, right? And it's the same thing that happens to folks like me, like the things that they said about me when the Key Bridge collapsed, right? Because when people are elected who are going to do the right thing, even though it's not popular, who are going to make sure that everybody is taken care of, not just a small few, and in this country, typically that means rich, wealthy, straight white men, right? Then folks who have never heard the word no, who've never had to follow rules, who've never had to work hard, who've never had anything having to happen to them outside of what they wanted, they are going to respond in a very erratic way, in a very extreme way. And that's what you've seen with this party now and who's leading it. It's not folks that are sensible, who understand the realities of the world. It's folks who are afraid that their way of life are being threatened because everyone is being focused on and everyone should have an equal playing field.
There's been a real shift in the energy.
Yes.
In the last 3 weeks. There's a whole lot of energy in this space now that would not have been here 3 weeks ago. So how does the Democratic Party capitalize on that shift in energy and move it all the way to November?
We got to keep pushing, right? I'm going to continue to be out there. Never in my mind did I ever think that I'll be in New Hampshire campaigning, but I did it, right? I'll be in Pennsylvania.
How well were you received?
I was received very well.
Okay.
Very well where I was in Nashua, New Hampshire. I've been to Pennsylvania, and we're going to continue to do that because we have to deliver the message to everybody in every place, every corner of this country, and meet people where they are and tell them what's at stake. Remind them of who he is versus who she is. They called me the DEI mayor. They call her the DEI vice president. And yes, we all the duly elected incumbent vice president and mayor. And reminding people that we will make her the first woman to be the president of these United States because she's the most qualified, because she has the record, because of the accomplishments, and because who better to go against a criminal than a prosecutor.
Well said. Well said, Brandon Scott, Mayor of Baltimore, Maryland. My brother, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Greatly, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. No problem. No problem.
Your patience,
Thank you.
man. Hey, folks, Politics in Color is where you are. You want to get and join the conversation? This is where you do it. politicsincolor.com. We're coming to you from the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago, Illinois. There's a whole lot more. Stay tuned.